You've been lied to about sleep. They told you it comes when you finally stop worrying, when your room is perfectly quiet, when your body is completely tired. But if that were true, why do so many people collapse into bed exhausted, only to lie awake staring at the ceiling, trapped in thoughts they can't turn off? Why do you wake up in the morning still tired, still heavy, as if your body never truly rested? The truth is, deep sleep isn't something you force. It's something you fall into when your mind and heart finally let go. And for centuries, Buddhist stories have held the secret. Simple parables told under moonlight, gentle teachings whispered in monasteries, tales of rivers, lotuses, and wind. They carry the medicine your soul has been waiting for. Not sleeping pills, not endless scrolling, but inner healing, the kind that clears away the noise so your body can sink into rest as natural as nightfall. These stories dissolve the weight of your day, release the tension you didn't know you were holding, and guide you into a sleep so deep it feels like your spirit is being renewed. Tonight, as you listen, your mind will stop fighting, the worries will loosen their grip, your breath will slow, your body will soften, and sleep will find you gentle, natural, unstoppable. And when you wake, you won't just feel rested, you'll feel healed, lighter in spirit, stronger in heart, clearer in mind. This is not just another bedtime story. This is 3 hours of Buddhist wisdom woven to carry you into the deepest sleep of your life and to heal the places inside you that even dreams cannot reach. Are you ready to let go, to drift, to heal? Then close your eyes, the journey begins now. The night is quiet now, and your mind is beginning to soften after hearing these words. But before you drift deeper, there is a story waiting, one that carries an ancient key to stillness. It begins not with thunder or fireworks, but with something so ordinary that most people overlook it: a pond. Yet in its stillness lies a mirror of the mind, and through it you will discover how to release the turbulence inside you so that deep sleep can finally hold you. Long ago, in a small Buddhist monastery hidden between hills, a young monk was restless. Each night he closed his eyes and tried to meditate, but his thoughts pulled him in every direction. He worried about his future, replayed the mistakes of his past, and found himself trapped in storms of thought that left him drained even after hours of sitting. One evening, his teacher led him outside to a pond at the edge of the temple grounds. The moonlight rested on the surface, but the water was disturbed, rippling with every gust of wind. "Do you see this water?" the teacher asked softly. "This is your mind when you cling to thoughts. You cannot see the moon clearly when the surface is shaking." The monk leaned closer, noticing how the reflection twisted and broke into fragments. "And what happens when the wind stops?" the teacher continued. The young monk waited in silence, and as the air grew still, the ripples settled until the water reflected the moon perfectly. In that moment, the monk understood. The pond is not special. It does not force itself into calmness. It only settles when nothing disturbs it. The same is true for the mind. When we stop feeding it with constant judgment, analysis, or resistance, it naturally returns to stillness. This story is not about magical powers. It is about the art of allowing. Sleep becomes possible not when you demand it, but when you let the pond of your mind rest without interference. Modern science echoes this wisdom. Neuroscientists have discovered that the human brain is designed to wander, producing thousands of thoughts each day. But when we give too much attention to every single thought, the brain remains stuck in overdrive. The mind becomes like stormy water, unable to rest. Studies on meditation show that by practicing non-judgmental awareness, people can reduce the activity in the brain's default mode, network, the part responsible for repetitive thinking and rumination. When that activity decreases, calmness increases. This is not mystical, it is biological. What the monk saw in the pond centuries ago is the same truth revealed by brain scans today. A settled mind is a natural mind. But how do you settle it when you feel overwhelmed, when the day refuses to leave you, when sleep feels far away? The key is not to suppress thoughts, but to observe them as ripples on the surface of your pond. Let them rise, let them fade, without jumping in. In Buddhist practice, this is called bare attention, watching without judgment, like a silent witness. You do not need to push thoughts away, for that only creates more disturbance. Instead, you let them pass as gently as clouds sliding across the sky. Slowly, the turbulence weakens, the surface clears, and sleep begins to enter, not as an enemy conquered, but as a guest welcomed. There is another story often told in the temples of Thailand. A traveler arrived at a village complaining that he could not find peace anywhere. He carried heavy bags and wandered from place to place, yet still his heart was restless. The old monk he spoke to handed him a cup filled with water and said, "Stir this." The traveler stirred until the water turned cloudy. "Now wait," said the monk. Minutes passed and the traveler grew impatient, wanting the water to clear faster. But the monk simply shook his head. "The more you want it to clear, the longer it stays cloudy. But if you leave it alone, it will settle on its own." The traveler watched as the dirt sank to the bottom, leaving the surface clean again. Then he understood. His mind was like that cup. He had been stirring it every day with his constant craving and worry. We often do the same at night. We stir our minds with replayed conversations, imagined problems, endless planning. We believe we are solving something, but really we are only keeping the water muddy. True rest comes when you set the spoon down, when you stop stirring. The moment you release the urge to fix every thought before bed, clarity returns and healing begins. This teaching does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means understanding that night is not the time to carry the weight of problem solving. The night is the time for settling. Your body heals, your mind repairs itself, your heart regains strength, all while you rest. Trying to solve tomorrow's problems tonight is like planting seeds and demanding fruit in the same moment. Nature does not rush, and neither should you. Sleep is nature's rhythm, and it comes when you align yourself with it rather than resist it. Researchers studying sleep cycles confirm this wisdom. They found that people who practice mindfulness before bed fall asleep faster and experience deeper stages of non-REM sleep, the kind where the body truly repairs itself. Why? Because mindfulness mirrors the still pond, it reduces the noise of intrusive thoughts and allows the nervous system to reset. This is the modern language for what Buddhist teachers have been saying for centuries. Let the water settle. The pond also teaches us something subtle. Reflection is only possible in stillness. When the surface is agitated, the moon cannot be seen. In the same way, when your mind is restless, you cannot see clearly what you feel or need. You mistake shadows for truth, fears for reality, and you suffer from illusions. But when you let the mind rest, clarity appears on its own. Suddenly you realize that the problem keeping you awake may not be as heavy as it seemed, or that the answer is simpler than you thought. This is not because you forced yourself to think harder, but because stillness revealed what was already there. Sleep itself becomes a form of wisdom, your subconscious untangling knots that your waking mind could not. One of the most beautiful aspects of this teaching is that the pond does not choose what to reflect. It shows the moon, the stars, even the passing bird or falling leaf. The mind, when still, can hold everything without resistance. This is healing in its purest form. To stop fighting your thoughts, to stop fearing your emotions, to let them appear and disappear like reflections on the water. When you lie in bed with this attitude, nothing feels like an enemy. Not the restless thought, not the memory, not the sensation in your body. All are ripples, temporary, harmless. This acceptance is what allows sleep to arrive naturally. In daily life, you can practice this even outside the bedroom. Pause during the day and notice how your thoughts ripple when someone criticizes you, when plans change, when you feel uncertain. Instead of reacting immediately, breathe and let the ripple fade. This builds the habit of calmness so that at night, when the storms usually come, you already know how to settle them. The pond inside you becomes familiar territory, not a battlefield. There is also a lesson about depth. On the surface, ripples disturb the reflection, but deep down the pond remains untouched. Beneath the turbulence, the water is still, silent, calm. In the same way, no matter how stormy your thoughts, there is a deeper layer of mind untouched by noise. Buddhist teachers call this the original mind, the pure awareness that remains steady through all change. When you rest in that depth, nothing can truly disturb you. Sleep becomes effortless because you are no longer identified with the surface ripples. You are resting in the silent depth. Some monks train by sitting near water for hours, listening to its stillness. They say that when you listen deeply, you realize the pond is not empty. It is alive with subtle movements, yet never chaotic. That is the balance you can bring to your own rest. Stillness does not mean absolute silence or the absence of all thought. It means harmony, where movements come and go without resistance. Thoughts may appear, sensations may rise, but they do not disturb the whole. Sleep comes when you no longer fear the presence of movement within you. And so, as you hear these words, let your mind rest like that pond. Feel the ripples of the day, the conversations, the worries, the expectations slowly sinking. Do not chase them away. Do not stir the spoon. Simply watch them settle on their own. This is the gentle power of Buddhist wisdom, the art of not forcing, the strength of allowing. In this stillness, your body begins to heal. Your mind clears, your spirit breathes again, and sleep comes, not as something earned, but as something given. The pond has taught us how the mind clears when it no longer fights with itself, how sleep arrives when we stop stirring the water of thought. Yet stillness is only one part of the path. There is another wisdom in nature, one that shows us not only how to be calm, but how to release, how to bend without breaking, and how to let go of what we hold too tightly. It lives in the quiet groves of bamboo. To walk among them is to feel a different kind of teaching, one that carries the secret of resilience and surrender, and tonight these stories will show you how that secret can free your heart from the weight of daily burdens, so that rest can finally deepen. The bamboo has always been revered across Asia, not only for its strength but for its humility. Unlike the oak that resists the wind, bamboo bends and rises again. In typhoons, whole forests of bamboo sway, bowing so low they almost touch the ground. Yet when the storm passes, they stand tall once more. Farmers and monks watched this for centuries and came to see in it a living parable of the mind. To resist life's winds is to break, to yield is to endure. And this endurance is not weakness, it is strength that flows rather than shatters. In sleep, the same wisdom applies. If you cling tightly to thoughts, to worries, to the need for control, you resist the natural rhythm of rest. But if you allow your mind to bend, to release its grip, you will rise restored when the night has passed. There is an old Zen story of a master walking with his student through a bamboo grove after a storm. Many stalks were bent, weighed down by rain, and the student asked if they would die. The master shook his head and smiled. By morning, they will rise again. Their secret is not in fighting the rain, but in letting it fall. Learn from them, and you will carry no burden into your sleep. This is the essence of letting go, not to deny that the storm exists, but to meet it with such surrender that nothing remains heavy within you. Modern psychology has found something remarkably similar. Studies on resilience show that people who adapt rather than resist stress are less likely to suffer from anxiety or sleeplessness. Flexibility of mind, accepting what cannot be changed and adjusting with it, is linked to better recovery, both physically and emotionally. The bamboo is a living model of this truth. Its fibers are strong yet hollow, allowing it to bend without snapping. This hollowness is its wisdom. In the same way, when you keep space in your mind and do not overfill it with clinging thoughts, you too can bend without breaking. At night, burdens often feel heavier. Thoughts about mistakes, regrets, or things left undone cling to you like wet clothes. To carry them into bed is to deny yourself rest. The bamboo whispers a different path. Drop what you cannot carry through the night. It is not abandonment, but wisdom. Tomorrow will come, and you can lift what remains. But for tonight, release. Think of how the bamboo lets each raindrop slide away down its smooth stalk. It does not trap the water. It does not demand to hold it. This is the practice you can bring to your own mind. When a thought arises, let it slide away. No need to trap it, no need to argue with it. In this way, your mind empties itself and becomes light enough for sleep to embrace. Another lesson of bamboo is patience. It is known that when bamboo seeds are planted, sometimes nothing visible grows for years. Farmers tend to the soil, water it, wait through seasons, and still see nothing above ground. But beneath the earth, roots are spreading wide, preparing for sudden growth. Then, in a single season, shoots rise higher than a man's head almost overnight. The teaching is clear. True growth often begins unseen. Rest works in the same hidden way. You may think that lying down and doing nothing is wasted time, but beneath the surface, your body is repairing, your heart is recovering, your mind is building strength for tomorrow. To rest is not to waste life, but to prepare for its growth. Letting go of the demand to see results immediately is part of this healing. Just as the farmer trusts the bamboo to rise in its own time, you must trust your rest to work unseen. In daily practice, this surrender can take many forms. It may mean setting down the mental load you carry when you finish your work for the day, refusing to rehearse tomorrow's conversations, choosing instead to give the night back to rest. It may mean forgiving yourself for not finishing everything, for being imperfect, for being human. Forgiveness itself is a form of letting go. Without it, your sleep will always be shallow, for your heart cannot rest when it still clings to self-punishment. The bamboo teaches kindness through release. No stalk resents the rain that bends it. It bows, it accepts, it rises again. There is also beauty in the way bamboo grows together. Unlike many trees that stand apart, bamboo shoots rise in clusters, forming groves so dense they seem to breathe as one. This interconnection gives them strength. When wind blows, they sway together, supporting one another. The lesson here is that letting go does not always mean standing alone. Sometimes it means leaning on others, sharing your burdens, speaking what troubles you instead of locking it inside. To share is to lighten the load, just as one stalk leans into another. When you release in this way, your mind relaxes, knowing it does not have to carry everything alone. Scientists studying sleep have shown that people who carry unresolved emotional burdens, unspoken pain, unexpressed feelings, often suffer from insomnia. The act of expressing, of releasing through words or even through journaling, allows the nervous system to relax. This is bamboo's lesson in modern terms. Bend, do not hold rigidly. If you must cry, cry. If you must speak, speak. If you must write, write. These are ways of bending, not breaking. Another parable tells of a monk who once tried to chop bamboo to build a hut. Each time he struck, the bamboo bent instead of breaking, and he grew frustrated. His teacher said, "Do you see how it bends? This is why it endures. You try to conquer it, but it survives by yielding." In life, we often try to conquer every situation, every thought, every fear, yet sleep asks us to do the opposite. to let go of conquering, and to yield into softness, to bend into the arms of the night. This surrender is not only spiritual but physical. Research on relaxation response shows that when people practice letting go of muscle tension, their brain signals shift into patterns linked with deep sleep. Each release of the body is mirrored by release of the mind. You can practice this by simply noticing where you hold tension in your jaw, your shoulders, your stomach, and releasing it as the bamboo releases weight when it sways. Bit by bit, your body learns the art of surrender, and the night welcomes you deeper. Letting go also means not defining yourself by what you hold. Bamboo is hollow, yet strong. Its emptiness gives it purpose. In many temples, bamboo flutes are made from this hollow stalk. Music arises not from what fills it, but from the space within. Your own healing is found in the same principle. Sleep is not about adding more thoughts, more control, more effort. It is about emptying, creating space, letting the music of rest arise from within that space. When you feel overwhelmed, remember the flute. Its song comes only because it is empty. And so the grove teaches us, through its bending, its patience, its strength in togetherness, and its emptiness, that letting go is the only path to resilience. In the silence of night, this wisdom becomes a lullaby. The burdens of the day no longer need to cling to you. The rain of worries can fall and be released. The winds of uncertainty can blow, and you can bend. You need not resist, you need not break. You only need to yield like the bamboo, surrendering into rest, trusting that when the morning comes, you too will rise again light, strong, and renewed. The bamboo has shown us that strength lies not in holding on, but in releasing. That true resilience is found in the art of bending and rising again. Yet there is another lesson that flows naturally from this truth. Letting go creates space, and that space itself becomes a gift. To receive rest, the heart must be open, not crowded, not overflowing with demands. In Buddhist tradition, this wisdom is taught through the image of the empty bowl. At first glance it seems so simple, but the depth of its teaching reaches into every corner of life, and tonight it will guide you into sleep without struggle. A bowl is only useful when it is empty. When it is already full, nothing more can enter. This is why monks carry their alms bowls through villages each morning with nothing inside. They rely not on their own possessions but on the generosity of others, and they do so with humility, knowing that a filled bowl cannot welcome new nourishment. In the same way, the mind that is cluttered cannot welcome rest. When you lie down at night carrying the noise of the day, your bowl is already overflowing. There is no room for sleep to enter. Only when you empty it, setting aside the thoughts, the plans, the expectations, can rest pour in naturally. This teaching reaches deeper than just quieting thoughts. Emptiness in Buddhism is not a void of nothingness, but a spaciousness that allows life to flow freely. When the bowl is empty, it is not barren. It is open, receptive, ready. Sleep is like the food offered into the monk's bowl. It cannot be forced, it can only be received. This changes how we approach the night. So often we try to grab at sleep, to chase it, to command it. But sleep does not obey force. It comes when you stop filling the bowl with effort and let it be empty. In a Zen story, a scholar once visited a master to learn about enlightenment. The master poured tea into the scholar's cup until it overflowed onto the table. "Stop," cried the scholar, "it is full already." The master smiled. "Like this cup, your mind is full of your own opinions and judgments. How can I teach you unless you first empty it?" This same parable applies directly to rest. How can sleep enter when your mind is already full of struggle? Emptiness is the doorway. Modern psychology supports this idea. Studies on sleep hygiene show that people who ruminate, who continuously replay events or worries, struggle to fall asleep and stay asleep. Their bowls are full, their minds too crowded for rest to arrive. Therapies like mindfulness and acceptance-based practices encourage releasing thoughts rather than clinging to them. In effect, they teach the same lesson as the empty bowl: create space, and healing will come on its own. There is also a subtle beauty in how emptiness allows for receiving without resistance. A bowl does not argue with what is placed inside. It does not demand or reject. It simply holds. In the same way, when your mind is empty, sleep is received with ease. You are no longer battling with yourself, no longer saying, "I must sleep now," or "Why can't I rest?" Instead, you are open, willing to hold whatever comes, whether it is silence, dreams, or deep rest. This receptivity itself is healing. In daily life, most people equate emptiness with loss. To be empty feels frightening, as though something is missing. But Buddhist wisdom teaches the opposite. Emptiness is freedom. It means you are no longer weighed down, no longer bound to constant grasping. The bowl without clutter is not poor. It is ready. Your mind at night, when emptied, is not lacking. It is prepared to receive the deep nourishment of sleep. This lesson extends beyond the mind to the body as well. When monks eat from their bowls, they practice mindful consumption. They do not rush, they do not overfill, they accept what is given and nothing more. This moderation reflects balance. At night, emptiness in the body is also important. Heavy meals, stimulants, and excess activity all keep the body too full to rest. To come to sleep with lightness, neither starved nor stuffed, neither exhausted nor overstimulated, is to prepare the bowl of the body to receive rest. Another story tells of a monk who cleaned his bowl each night, carefully washing away every grain of rice before placing it upside down on the shelf. One day, a novice asked why he was so meticulous. The elder replied, "If I leave even a little behind, ants will come. Small things attract more, until the bowl is no longer clean. To keep it pure, I must empty it fully each night." This is a mirror for our own habits. If you leave small thoughts unresolved, they multiply. A minor worry can become a swarm of restless energy, preventing rest. To truly receive sleep, you must clean the bowl of your mind, even of the smallest grains of concern. In science, this clearing is reflected in the role of the brain's glymphatic system, which activates during deep sleep to wash away toxins and waste. Just as the monk cleans his bowl to keep it pure, your body requires emptiness to begin its nightly cleansing. When you surrender to sleep, your brain literally rinses itself, leaving you refreshed in the morning. But this natural process can only begin when you stop filling the bowl with thought and tension. The bowl also symbolizes humility. To carry it empty into the world is to admit need, to accept dependence. At night, this humility is essential. To fall asleep is to admit you cannot control everything. You cannot hold the world together by staying awake. You must surrender, acknowledging your limits, allowing life to continue without you for a while. This humility itself is a form of emptiness, a recognition that you are not meant to carry every burden endlessly. When you set them down, sleep embraces you. There is wisdom, too, in the shape of the bowl, open, curved, with no sharp edges. It accepts whatever is given. This openness is what you can cultivate before sleep. Instead of fighting dreams, resisting feelings, or forcing relaxation, you can become like the bowl, round, open, soft. Let what comes, come. Let what leaves, leave. This gentle receptivity prevents the inner struggle that so often robs rest. In daily practice, you can empty your bowl in many ways. Some people find it through meditation, watching their breath until thoughts fade. Others find it through journaling, pouring out their worries onto paper so that the mind is no longer crowded. Some find it in prayer, handing their burdens to something larger. All are acts of emptiness, of creating space. What matters is not the form, but the intention. to arrive at night with a bowl ready to receive. This is also why rituals before bed are so powerful. Monks chant, bow, and prepare their bowls with care. These small acts tell the mind it is time to empty. You too can create such rituals, dimming the lights, setting aside your phone, drinking a warm cup of tea, breathing deeply. Each act is a grain removed from the bowl, each one a signal that the day is done and the night has begun. Over time, these rituals carve a pathway to emptiness that welcomes sleep effortlessly. Let us not forget that an empty bowl can be shared. In monasteries, food is often distributed among monks, each one offering and receiving in turn. This practice reminds them that life is not about holding tightly but about flow. In your own rest, sharing may mean releasing burdens in conversation, allowing others to support you, or offering kindness so that your heart is not heavy with resentment. To forgive, to share, to release these acts empty the bowl of bitterness and make space for peace. And so, the empty bowl teaches us that sleep is not something to grasp but something to receive. It shows us that emptiness is not loss but readiness, that humility and release are the gateways to healing rest. When your mind is cluttered, when your body is tense, when your heart is heavy, you must set them down. Empty the bowl. Only then can the nourishment of deep sleep enter and renew you. When you wake, you rise with a bowl ready again to meet the day, knowing that each night you can return to this practice of emptiness, this gift of rest received without struggle. The bowl has taught us that true rest is not taken by force, but received through emptiness, through the willingness to set aside what is already full and allow the night to pour into us. Yet the path does not end there. Emptiness opens the way, but what grows from that emptiness is a mystery of its own. For in the still hours, when the world grows silent and the weight of the day has faded, a hidden flower begins to unfold, one that few ever see. It is the lotus that blooms at night, a rare symbol of healing that speaks not through brightness, but through the quiet work of darkness. The lotus has always carried meaning in Buddhist teachings. Rising from mud yet opening into pure petals, it embodies the truth that beauty and clarity emerge from struggle and obscurity. Most people know the lotus as a flower of daylight, a symbol of enlightenment shining in the Sunday. But some species open only under the moon, hidden from the gaze of the busy world. They are quiet healers, teaching that transformation often happens in places unseen. When you close your eyes to sleep, your body and spirit enter the same kind of silence. Growth, repair, and renewal happen not in the noise of effort, but in the unseen rhythms of night. This is a reminder that not all progress is visible. The world often celebrates loud victories, visible success, constant motion. Yet the deepest healing takes place where no one is watching. Cells regenerate, the brain clears toxins, emotions untangle, the heart resets its rhythm. Just as the nocturnal lotus opens without audience or applause, your healing unfolds while the world sleeps. Accepting this truth allows you to let go of the pressure to always see or measure your progress. Sleep teaches that not everything valuable must be visible to be real. There is a story told of a monk who sat by a pond at dusk, waiting for the famous lotus flowers to close. But one remained, pale and luminous, opening wider as the night deepened. He realized then that its beauty was reserved not for the sun, but for the moon. The lesson he carried was that each being has its own rhythm, its own season of blooming. You may not thrive in the same ways or times as others, but that does not make your growth any less true. At night, when you feel still and hidden, your own lotus may be opening quietly within, guiding your healing in ways the world cannot see. Modern science confirms the wisdom of hidden growth. During the deepest stages of sleep, the brain consolidates memories, strengthens learning, and balances emotions. The immune system releases proteins that repair tissues and fight illness. Hormones regulate growth and restore balance. None of this is visible in the moment, yet it is essential for survival. Just as the night lotus does not announce its bloom, your body's healing in sleep does not call attention to itself. But without it, life cannot flourish. The symbolism of blooming in darkness also carries an emotional truth. Many people associate the night with fear, loneliness, or uncertainty. Yet Buddhist teachings invite us to see night as sacred, as the time when silence reveals what light often hides. The lotus that opens in darkness teaches us to trust the unseen, to trust the process unfolding, even when we cannot name it. When you surrender to sleep, you step into this hidden garden where healing arises without your control. There is also resilience in this nocturnal bloom. To thrive in darkness requires adaptation, strength that does not depend on constant external validation. The night lotus does not need the sun to prove its worth. In the same way, your healing does not need to be displayed for others to recognize. Many struggles you carry are faced alone in silence. Many transformations occur within, unseen by the eyes of the world. Yet they are no less real. Sleep becomes the sanctuary where these hidden changes take place. In daily life, the lesson of the night lotus can shift how you view rest. Instead of dismissing sleep as passive or unproductive, you can see it as sacred work. To close your eyes is not to waste time, but to enter a secret chamber where your deepest healing takes place. The world may not value this silence, but your body and mind depend on it. By honoring sleep as a form of unseen blooming, you give yourself permission to rest fully without guilt. There is a story from Japan of an old gardener who tended lotus ponds. He told a child watching him, "These flowers teach patience. The ones that open by day remind us to shine, but the ones that open by night remind us to heal." The child asked why the night lotuses hid their beauty from most people. The gardener replied, "Because not everything beautiful is meant to be seen. Some things are meant to be felt." This truth applies to the way rest nourishes you. You may not see the healing, but you feel it when you wake with a lighter heart, a clearer mind, or a body less burdened by pain. Scientific studies on emotional regulation show that during sleep, particularly during REM stages, the brain processes and integrates emotional experiences. Painful memories soften, intense feelings are balanced, and new insights emerge. This is healing that happens without conscious effort. The night lotus blooms within your mind, releasing what is heavy and restoring balance. By the time dawn arrives, you may feel different without knowing why. The night lotus also teaches us about trust. It does not resist the darkness, nor does it fear it. It surrenders to it and uses it as the condition for growth. Many people lie in bed fearing the night, dreading their racing thoughts or restless feelings. But if you approach the night as the lotus does, as a friend, as a partner in healing, your relationship with rest transforms. Darkness no longer feels like an enemy, but like fertile ground. This trust allows you to let go of resistance and slip naturally into the healing silence of sleep. There is beauty in how the night lotus stands as a reminder that healing does not require perfection. Its petals open not in bright, flawless light, but in shadow, in obscurity. This is a call to release the demand for perfect conditions before you allow yourself to rest. You do not need to fix every problem, silence every thought, or arrange your life into perfect order before you deserve sleep. The lotus teaches that healing happens even in the midst of imperfection, even in the mud of confusion. To rest in darkness is to accept your humanity and allow life to work through you as you are. In practice, this means you can prepare for sleep not by chasing the perfect environment, but by cultivating acceptance. Yes, you may still have worries. Yes, there may still be noise or imperfection. But none of this prevents the lotus from blooming. None of this prevents healing from unfolding within you. By allowing rest to happen in imperfect conditions, You align with the natural wisdom of the night lotus. The nocturnal bloom also symbolizes the sacredness of silence. Silence is not empty, but full of unseen activity. The monks who meditate at night say the silence of those hours carries a depth unlike daytime. It is as if the world itself is resting, and in that collective stillness, your own mind can sink more deeply into peace. To listen to the silence of the night is to feel the lotus opening within you. Silence becomes not absence but presence, a companion guiding you into sleep. Another lesson comes from the lotus's roots. Though its flower rises above the water, its strength comes from anchoring deep in the mud. Healing, too, is rooted in the parts of you that are not always beautiful, to look at the pain, the mistakes, the shadows. At night, when the conscious mind rests, these roots are nourished. Sleep integrates your experiences, both light and dark, so that new growth can rise. This is the hidden work of healing, not erasing the mud, but transforming it into nourishment for your bloom. When you rise in the morning, you may never have witnessed the lotus bloom, yet its work was done. In the same way, you may not remember the hours of sleep or the details of dreams, but your healing has happened. The silence has carried you through renewal. Trusting this unseen process is the heart of the night lotus's teaching. You do not need to see it for it to be real. You only need to allow it. And so the lotus that blooms at night becomes a mirror of your own hidden healing. It teaches that rest is not emptiness but quiet transformation, that silence is not absence but presence, that darkness is not loss but fertile ground. To surrender to sleep is to enter the hidden garden where your lotus waits, unfolding its petals in the stillness of the night, renewing your body, softening your heart, and preparing you to meet the dawn renewed. The night lotus has shown us that healing does not need the light of day. That renewal often unfolds quietly in silence where no one sees. Yet silence itself has a voice, a movement that cannot be held but only felt. When monks sat through the long hours of darkness, they often listened not just to stillness, but to the shifting wind around them. That sound became their teacher, reminding them of impermanence, of the way everything moves and changes, of how no storm, no thought, no fear ever stays. To those who carry anxiety, the whispering wind holds a rare medicine, for it shows us that all things pass, and in knowing this, the heart can finally rest. The wind cannot be seen, yet its presence is undeniable. Leaves tremble, doors creak, grasses bend, and the air itself changes with each current. Monks called it a perfect teacher because it never stays still. To listen to the wind is to hear the truth of impermanence expressed through sound. No gust lasts, no silence remains forever. One moment passes into the next without clinging. When you understand this deeply, you begin to see your own worries in the same way. Anxiety feels endless only when you believe it is permanent. But like the wind, it rises, shifts, and falls away. There is an old tale of a monk who meditated beside a bamboo grove each evening. The wind would rush through, filling the air with rustling. At first, he found it distracting. But as the seasons passed, he realized that the sound was never the same twice. Some nights it was gentle, other nights harsh, sometimes sudden, sometimes fading. He began to see his own thoughts reflected in that rustling, unpredictable, passing, never fixed. The realization freed him from the need to control them. He said to his students, "When you hear the wind, you hear the truth that nothing lasts. Why then cling to what was never yours to keep?" This teaching is central to easing the restless heart at night. Anxiety often grows from the illusion of permanence. You feel as though the problem, the pain, or the uncertainty will never end. The mind clings, replaying it endlessly, feeding fear. But when you bring the awareness of impermanence, you cut through that illusion. Just as no gust of wind can hold its strength forever, no feeling, no thought, no circumstance endures unchanged. To rest is to trust this truth, to let the current move without resistance. Modern science reflects this ancient insight. Research on emotional states shows that feelings, even intense ones, have natural lifespans. Neuroscientists found that most emotions, when left alone, last only about 90 seconds before the body resets. What prolongs them is the mind's constant replay, the clinging to stories. Anxiety becomes endless, not because of its nature, but because of our attachment to it. The wind teaches another way. It does not grasp the gust that just passed, nor hold the one about to come. It flows. When you learn to let feelings flow the same way, their grip weakens. In daily life, practicing impermanence changes how you face challenges. When success arrives, you do not cling to it as eternal. When failure comes, you do not despair, as though it will never pass. You meet both with the same openness. This perspective softens perfectionism, fear of loss, and the pressure to control everything. At night, this same perspective loosens anxiety. The thought that keeps you awake is no longer a prison when you see it as a passing breeze. It will not stay, and therefore it does not deserve your endless struggle. The whispering wind also reveals the beauty of change. Trees that sway in the wind grow stronger roots. Landscapes, shaped by currents, become more alive. Your own growth often comes through the winds of change, through transitions that may feel harsh in the moment, but shape you in ways that stillness cannot. To resist every change is to live rigidly, constantly broken by what cannot be stopped. To flow with it, like the wind itself, is to discover freedom. Anxiety fades when you stop fighting the truth that life moves. There is a tale from the Tibetan mountains of a hermit who lived in a cave where the wind howled for days each winter. Visitors once asked him how he endured such noise. He replied, "The wind is my scripture. Each howl teaches me that nothing stays. If even the mountains cannot resist change, why should I think my worries will?" His peace came not from silence, but from learning to hear impermanence in every gust. Sleep itself reflects this teaching. Your body drifts through cycles: light sleep, deep sleep, dream states, each shifting like currents of air. No stage lasts forever, yet each has its purpose. To sleep well is to allow these natural rhythms without resistance. Anxiety interrupts because it demands control, insisting the mind stay fixed. But rest deepens when you trust the body's natural flow, just as you trust the wind to shift on its own. In mindfulness practice, teachers sometimes guide students to listen to wind or breath as a meditation. Both remind us of impermanence. Each breath rises, pauses, and leaves. Each gust arrives and passes. By focusing on these movements, the mind learns to release clinging. Anxiety loses its weight because it no longer feels eternal. You learn to say, "This too is passing." Such words are not mere comfort, they are the deepest truth. Anxiety often thrives on the desire for certainty. The mind craves fixed answers, permanent ground. But life does not offer this. The wind teaches that movement itself is the ground, that certainty is found not in what stays, but in the fact that everything moves. To accept impermanence is to release the desperate need for permanence. In that release, anxiety dissolves. Sleep enters because you no longer demand stillness from a world that is always shifting. There is also humility in this lesson. The wind does not belong to anyone. It moves across villages, mountains, oceans, caring nothing for ownership. In the same way, your experiences, joys, sorrows, thoughts move through you, but are not truly yours. They are passing phenomena. When you cling to them as mine, you suffer. When you see them as currents passing through, you are free. At night, this humility allows you to rest without the heavy burden of possession. The worry is not yours to keep. The fear is not yours to own. They are winds moving through. Science shows that when people adopt this perspective, their bodies also respond. Heart rate slows, stress hormones decrease, and sleep becomes easier. Letting go of ownership over passing states literally shifts the nervous system into balance. The body knows how to rest when the mind stops grasping. The whispering wind also carries a gentler teaching about beauty. Many people love the sound of wind in leaves or grasses because it feels soothing, yet it is the same force that can also be harsh. This paradox mirrors life itself. Change can feel painful in one moment and beautiful in another. To embrace impermanence is to see both sides without judgment. In the context of rest, this means allowing even discomfort to be part of the flow. You do not need perfect conditions to sleep. You only need to stop resisting the conditions that exist. There is a final story of a teacher who told his students to hold their breath as long as they could. When they gasped for air, he said, "This is how you cling to what must pass." When you let go, breath returns freely. So it is with every experience. Clinging suffocates, release brings life. At night, holding tightly to thoughts suffocates rest. Letting them move like breath, like wind, restores your natural rhythm. And so, the whispering wind becomes a teacher of the heart. It shows that nothing you fear is permanent, that change is the law of life, that anxiety dissolves when you stop clinging to what must move. In the darkness of night, when the air stirs around you, you can hear this truth directly. Each current is a reminder, all things pass. With that knowledge, the restless mind softens, the anxious heart eases, and sleep arrives as naturally as the breeze fades into silence. The whispering wind has reminded us that everything moves and nothing lasts, that even the strongest storm eventually softens, and that by trusting this flow, we can release the weight of anxiety. Yet there is another sound that has guided seekers for centuries, a sound not carried by nature's breath, but by human hands shaping metal into a voice of stillness. As dusk settles over monasteries, a bell is struck, and its deep resonance spreads across fields and villages. To those who listen, it is more than sound. It is a signal to let go, to release attachments, to surrender the day's burdens, and to return to the calm that lies within. The bell has always been more than an instrument. In Buddhist practice, it is a reminder, a call to mindfulness, a boundary between the noise of the world and the silence of the heart. When the bell rings at dusk, monks stop their tasks, bow, and return to presence. The act itself teaches that release is not about removing life's challenges, but about pausing to see them differently. In the fading light, the bell tells us, "The day is complete. What is done. What is left will wait." This is the wisdom that allows rest to begin. There is an old story of a novice monk who struggled with endless thoughts during meditation. Each evening, as the bell rang, he found his mind still clinging to chores, conversations, and worries. One night he asked his teacher how to silence the noise inside. The teacher said, "When the bell sounds, do not hear it as metal striking. Hear it as your attachments dissolving." The next evening, when the bell rang, the monk pictured his worries scattering with each vibration. For the first time, he felt stillness. The teaching was not in the sound itself, but in the meaning he gave it. The bell became a doorway into letting go. This practice reflects a deeper truth. Release requires ritual. The human mind clings by habit, and habits are not broken by effort alone, but by replacing them with new patterns. The monastery bell creates such a pattern. It signals closure, inviting the mind to shift. In modern life, we often miss these transitions. Work flows into evening, screens glow into night, and the mind never receives the signal that it is time to let go. By creating your own form of bell, whether through sound, stillness, or ritual, you can restore this boundary. The brain responds powerfully to cues, and with them, rest becomes easier. Neuroscience has found that auditory signals, especially deep resonant tones, can trigger relaxation responses in the nervous system. Low-frequency vibrations, slow heart rate, lower blood pressure, and shift brain waves into calmer states. This is why bells, gongs, and chimes have been used across cultures for meditation. Their resonance does not simply fade into silence, it lingers, carrying the listener inward. When used at the end of the day, this sound helps the body know it is safe to release. The bell also carries symbolic meaning. Its shape, open and hollow, reflects emptiness, and its voice arises only when struck. This reminds us that calm is not separate from life's impacts. Just as the bell needs a strike to produce sound, our hearts often grow through challenges. Yet even when struck, the bell does not cling to the blow. It transforms it into resonance that fades into peace. To live like the bell is to accept life's strikes, but release them into sound, not carry them as scars. At night, this means letting the events of the day echo once and fade. No need to replay them endlessly. The sound has been made, let it dissolve. There is also a collective aspect to the bell. In monasteries, when it rings, every monk hears the same call. It unites them in shared presence. This teaches us that release is not only personal but communal. When you hear a bell, you remember that countless others are also letting go, also surrendering, also resting. You are not alone in this practice. This sense of shared release can ease the loneliness of struggle. Knowing others are also laying down their burdens makes your own release lighter. A folk tale from Vietnam tells of a village where each evening the monastery bell echoed across rice fields. Farmers, hearing it, would stop their work, set down their tools, and bow toward the sound. They said the bell reminded them that rice could wait, but the spirit could not. The harvest would always return, but the moment to be present would not. This wisdom applies equally to our own restless minds. The tasks, the worries, the lists, they will return, but the chance to rest, to be present, to release that moment, once lost, is gone. The bell teaches us to honor it. Modern rituals can adapt this lesson. Many people use gentle sounds, wind chimes by a window, a singing bowl at the end of meditation, or even the chime of a clock to mark closure. What matters is not the sound itself, but the meaning you assign. If you decide that each tone signals release, your body learns to respond. Over time, the simple act of hearing it becomes enough to guide you into calm. In this way, you create your own monastery bell at dusk, even in the midst of modern life. The bell also embodies time. It is struck at specific hours, dividing day from night, activity from rest. This rhythm teaches that release has its place. Many people resist rest because they feel it steals time from productivity. But the bell shows that rest is built into the rhythm of life. Just as breath requires exhale as well as inhale, life requires release as well as striving. The bell at dusk tells you, the time for striving is over. The time for release has come. In meditation practice, teachers often guide students to listen deeply to a bell. The instruction is to follow the sound until it disappears completely, hearing not only the strike but the fading resonance. This practice trains the mind to stay present, to notice subtlety, to appreciate the fading as much as the beginning. Applied to life, it teaches us to let attachments fade without clinging. Each worry, each desire, each memory can be heard as a bell arising, resonating, and dissolving. When you listen this way, sleep becomes easier because you are no longer chasing echoes. The bell's voice also connects to the body. Vibrations pass not only through the ear, but through the chest, resonating with the heart. Monks describe this as the bell speaking to the soul. In modern terms, vibration calms the vagus nerve, which regulates relaxation and sleep. This is why many find deep tones grounding. When you feel restless, letting sound wash through you can anchor you in the body, shifting you away from anxious thought. The bell thus becomes both symbol and tool, guiding you into calmness. There is another lesson in how the bell is treated. In temples it is approached with reverence. Monks bow before striking it, acknowledging its role as a teacher. This shows that release itself is sacred. To let go is not laziness but devotion, an honoring of life's rhythm. If you treat your nightly release with the same reverence, seeing rest as sacred, not optional, you create space for deeper healing. Sleep is not an afterthought, but a ritual of release. Stories tell of travelers arriving at monasteries just as dusk fell, hearing the bell echo through the valley. Some said the sound felt like forgiveness, as though their burdens were lifted with each tone. Others said it felt like coming home, as though the heart recognized its own rhythm in the fading resonance. These testimonies remind us that release is not abstract, but deeply felt. When you let go of the day, you experience a physical lightness, a softening of the chest, a loosening of the jaw. This is the body's way of saying, the bell has been heard. And so, the monastery bell at dusk becomes more than sound. It is a teacher of release, a guide into rhythm, a symbol of emptiness that transforms impact into resonance. It shows us that to end the day is not to lose, but to honor life's cycles. By creating space, by listening deeply, by assigning sacred meaning to closure, you prepare yourself for rest that is not shallow but complete. Each evening can hold its own bell, reminding you that attachments may arise, but they are not yours to carry into the night. The sound fades, the day fades, and in that fading lies the doorway to inner calm. The monastery bell at dusk taught us how to release the weight of the day, how to let sound itself guide us towards stillness. Yet even as the bell fades, there is another ancient symbol waiting to be understood. In temples across the world, a single candle is often lit during evening practice. Its glow offers warmth, but its true lesson lies not in how it shines, but in how it ends. The story of a candle's last flame speaks to endings, to transitions, and to the gentle acceptance that every night invites. Fire has always been a teacher in Buddhist thought. It is both life-giving and impermanent, fierce yet fragile. A candle burns steadily for hours, and then, in one final flicker, it goes out. This moment is not seen as tragedy, but as truth. Every flame has its time, and every ending carries its own peace. When monks speak of rest, they often compare it to a candle's last flame. The body and mind glow through the day, offering warmth and energy, and at night they naturally dim. To resist this dimming is to suffer, but to allow it is to honor the rhythm of life. There is a story of a master who held a candle before his students and asked them to watch it closely. The flame danced, wavered, and then burned evenly. Hours later, as the wax melted low, the flame weakened and went out. The master said, "This is every life, every day, every breath. To fight the ending is to fight nature. To accept it is to find peace." His students understood that nightly rest is itself a small rehearsal of letting go. Each time we sleep, we practice the art of surrender, releasing the flame of wakefulness without fear. This teaching reaches beyond sleep into how we approach transitions. Many resist endings of conversations, of relationships, of seasons clinging to the warmth of what has been. Yet every ending is also a beginning. The candle's flame, when it dies, becomes smoke rising into air, light stored in memory, warmth lingering in the room. In the same way, when the day ends, it does not vanish, but transforms into the rest that sustains tomorrow. By accepting this transformation, you release anxiety about what is lost and rest into trust that nothing truly disappears, it only changes form. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom. Therapists who study resilience emphasize the importance of closure rituals, small acts that help the mind accept endings without clinging. These rituals are like watching a candle burn out, guiding us gently into acceptance. People who practice such rituals before bed, writing down worries, dimming lights, or saying words of gratitude, find that sleep comes easier. The brain recognizes the transition and allows itself to rest. Just as the candle signals closure, these practices tell the nervous system it is safe to let go. The candle's flame also reveals the balance between effort and surrender. It burns only because wax and wick meet fire. Too much wax, and it smothers; too little, and it starves. The balance sustains it until its natural end. Our own energy works the same way. To live fully, we burn through activity, through connection, through thought. But if we never allow the flame to rest, we burn unevenly, either exhausting ourselves or losing purpose. Sleep is the balance, the natural dimming that prevents burnout. By honoring the nightly extinguishing of our flame, we preserve our ability to shine again at dawn. There is another story of a novice who feared death and clung desperately to life. His teacher gave him a candle and told him to watch it until it burned out. At first, the novice felt sorrow as the flame weakened, but then he noticed the beauty of its final flicker. It was delicate, graceful, and complete. He realized that endings are not enemies but teachers. Each night, when we surrender to sleep, we are not losing time but experiencing the grace of completion. The body, like the candle, rests so that new light may rise. In Buddhist practice, fire also symbolizes desire. It burns brightly, but consumes itself. Monks are taught not to extinguish desire by force, but to let it fade as the candle fades naturally when its fuel is no longer given. This too applies to rest. The desire to control sleep, to force it, often keeps us awake. But when we withdraw the fuel by releasing struggle, by loosening attachment, sleep arises naturally, and the flame of wakefulness fades without conflict. Scientific studies on sleep onset show that people who accept drowsiness instead of resisting it fall asleep more quickly. When participants were told to try to stay awake, many drifted off faster than when told to fall asleep now. This paradox mirrors the candle's teaching. The flame ends not by force, but by allowing conditions to complete themselves. Letting go, not grasping, is the key. The candle also speaks of presence. To watch a flame is to notice how it never holds still. It flickers, bends, stretches upward, contracts. Each moment is unique, yet the flame remains a flame. This is the nature of consciousness, ever-changing, never the same, twice, yet continuous. To see this clearly softens our fear of change. We realize that every moment of wakefulness, every stage of sleep, is simply another flicker of the flame. By honoring each without demand, we move through them peacefully. In monasteries, candles are often used during evening chants. Their light softens the space, and when the chants end, the flames are extinguished one by one. This ritual reflects impermanence and closure. It shows that even sacred practice ends, and its ending is part of its beauty. To bring this into daily life, you can create your own ritual of extinguishing, turning off lights slowly, closing your eyes with gratitude, breathing as though you are blowing out the flame of the day. These acts align your rhythm with the candle's truth. Completion is not loss, but preparation for renewal. Another lesson comes from the wax itself. As it melts, it feeds the flame, disappearing to give light. In the same way, each day we give our energy to tasks, relationships, and experiences. At night, we must allow what has been spent to rest. To expect constant burning without replenishment is to deny the law of nature. By respecting your own limits, by recognizing the wax of your body and mind must be renewed, You honor the rhythm that sustains life. There is also a spiritual dimension to the candle's last flame. Monks speak of nirvana as the extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. This extinguishing is not destruction but peace, like a flame going out naturally. Each night, as you surrender to sleep, you experience a small reflection of this peace. The fires of striving fade, the mind lets go, and you enter the quiet that nourishes the soul. By embracing this nightly extinguishing, you cultivate a deeper trust in life's larger cycles. Even in science, the metaphor holds. Sleep researchers describe the homeostatic drive for rest as a kind of pressure that builds during the day, like wax melting down. When it reaches its point, the flame of wakefulness dims and sleep begins. Fighting this process only creates imbalance. Allowing it brings harmony. This is the candle's teaching expressed in biology. The story of the candle's last flame teaches us to accept endings, to honor transitions, and to rest without fear. It shows that completion is not failure but fulfillment, that to extinguish is not to vanish but to transform. Each night, as your eyes close and the flame of wakefulness flickers out, you are not losing yourself but returning to the silence that makes new light possible. To live well is to burn brightly by day and to surrender gracefully by night, knowing that both are sacred parts of the same rhythm. The candle's last flame has shown us how endings are not to be feared but embraced, how each transition holds its own peace, and how surrendering to night is as natural as wax yielding to fire. From this teaching of impermanence, we move to another, one that speaks not of flickering light, but of steady endurance. When the flame has gone out and darkness fills the room, the head finds its place upon the pillow. Yet in many old folk tales, the pillow was never seen as a mere object of comfort, but as a sacred mountain, a quiet presence that absorbs the weight of suffering, holding it silently until the soul has rested. The mountain has always symbolized patience in Buddhist and folk traditions. It does not rush, it does not resist, it simply endures. The pillow, soft and close to us each night, becomes its reflection. When we rest our head, it is as if we are laying our burdens on a mountain vast enough to contain them all. In this way, the pillow is not only a place for the body, but a teacher for the mind. It shows us that suffering can be held, absorbed, and transformed without struggle. One story from the rural temples of China tells of a wandering monk who had no possessions except a single pillow. Villagers mocked him, saying it was a useless burden for one who should travel light. But he explained that each night, when he placed his head upon it, he whispered his worries into it, as though speaking to a mountain. The pillow never judged, never answered, yet each morning he rose lighter. The people came to understand that the pillow was not for comfort alone, but for the practice of release, a symbol of trust in something larger than oneself. This practice teaches that patience is not simply waiting, but allowing space for healing to unfold. The mountain does not hurry its growth. Seasons pass, and still it stands. In the same way, when you rest upon your pillow, you are invited to stop demanding instant relief. Anxiety, pain, and grief do not vanish in a single night. But when laid upon the mountain of patience, they lose their sharpness. The pillow becomes a vessel where time works quietly, softening what you cannot yet resolve. Modern science supports this view in unexpected ways. Researchers studying the psychology of sleep found that physical gestures of release, such as laying one's head down, create signals to the brain that it is safe to let go. This simple act tells the nervous system to shift from fight and flight into rest and digest. In a sense, the pillow becomes an anchor, absorbing the day's intensity and returning stability. It mirrors the mountain not by standing tall, but by holding steady against the weight we bring. The folk tales often describe pillows as more than fabric and stuffing. In some regions, They were said to contain the wisdom of mountains, believed to draw away nightmares or absorb sorrows. Children were told to whisper their troubles into the pillow before sleep, trusting that the mountain within would carry them away by morning. This practice shows a deep understanding of how humans need symbolic acts of release. Just as writing down worries can ease the mind, so can giving them to the pillow, letting it serve as a silent companion. The mountain also teaches endurance without resistance. It does not fight the storm, nor does it collapse under the weight of snow. It simply bears what comes, knowing that time will change it. In rest, we are invited to do the same. Lying upon the pillow, we give our suffering to patience, trusting that tomorrow may bring change we cannot yet see. This patience is not weakness but wisdom. It tells us that healing cannot be forced, that some knots untangle only in silence and time. There is a parable of a young monk who grew frustrated because his prayers did not bring quick relief from sorrow. His teacher told him to place his pillow upon the ground and sit before it. "This pillow is a mountain," the teacher said. "Strike it if you must, weep into it if you must, but notice how it endures." The monk did so, and as days passed, he learned that his pain was not erased but held. The mountain did not fight him, nor did it hurry him. In this reflection, he discovered patience, and with it, peace. From a psychological perspective, this reflects how resilience is cultivated. Studies show that people who practice acceptance of suffering, rather than constant resistance, experience less long-term stress. Patience itself reduces the impact of pain because it removes the urgency to escape. The pillow, as mountain, becomes a nightly teacher of this resilience. Each time you lay down, you are practicing surrender, entrusting your burdens to something larger, allowing yourself to breathe without demand for instant resolution. The symbolism deepens when we consider the mountain's silence. A mountain does not speak, yet its presence teaches more than words. The pillow, too, speaks in silence. It asks nothing, requires no explanation, and offers support without condition. For those who carry heavy thoughts, this silent companionship is healing. Words are not always needed. Sometimes the simple act of being held is enough. This truth applies not only to rest but to life. Patience often means holding space without rushing to fix. The folk traditions also saw the pillow as a vessel of dreams, linking the waking world with the hidden landscapes of the night. Mountains in myth were often places where gods or spirits dwelled, where visions could be received. To rest your head on the mountain was to open yourself to guidance that came not through effort, but through surrender. Dreams, in this view, are not random, but part of the healing work of patience, showing you slowly what your waking mind cannot yet grasp. Science echoes this with studies of REM sleep, where the brain processes emotions and integrates memories. What feels unresolved by day is often sorted by night, not through conscious control but through the natural work of dreaming. The pillow, as mountain, reflects this process. You lay your worries down, and in silence, healing takes place beyond your control. The mountain's patience also teaches us about perspective. To stand upon a mountain is to see far beyond the valleys below. In rest, when we surrender to patience, our inner view expands. What felt overwhelming in the moment may appear smaller when seen from the height of renewed clarity. The pillow, though close and small, becomes the gateway to this expanded view, for only by resting can we rise to see differently. There is a tale of an old woman who lost her son in war. Each night she wept into her pillow until she dreamed of a mountain. In the dream, the mountain told her, "I have held countless storms, and still I stand. Let me hold yours." She woke with tears, but also with calm, feeling as though her sorrow had been shared. The story spread, and villagers began to speak of pillows as sacred mountains that absorb grief. In this way, folk wisdom carried the truth that patience and endurance are as healing as action. From a practical view, this teaches us to approach rest not as a battle but as an act of entrusting. Instead of wrestling with thoughts, you give them to the pillow, to the mountain of patience. You allow the night to hold them while you restore. This shifts the relationship with suffering. It no longer feels like something you must solve immediately, but something you can set down for a while. In modern therapeutic approaches, similar practices are used. Cognitive behavioral strategies sometimes invite people to postpone worry by placing concerns in a symbolic container, allowing the mind to rest. The pillow, as mountain, is the container. Its symbolic weight makes the act meaningful, helping the nervous system release tension. The benefit is not only psychological but physical. Muscles soften, breathing slows, and sleep deepens. And so, the pillow as a mountain of patience teaches us to release suffering into something steady and vast. It reminds us that healing is not always quick, that endurance itself is sacred, that silence can hold what words cannot. Each night, when you rest your head, you are not simply lying down, you are placing your burdens on the mountain, trusting it to hold them while you find renewal. In the morning, you rise lighter, your suffering softened, your heart steadier, ready once more to meet the day. The pillow as a mountain of patience showed us how suffering can be laid down and absorbed in silence, how rest becomes deeper when we allow the night to hold what we cannot resolve. Yet there is another image, one that marks the threshold between the outer world and the inner sanctuary. In countless temples across Asia, pilgrims remove their shoes before entering sacred halls. This act is simple but profound, a gesture of leaving behind the dust of the road, the weight of travel, the burdens carried. In folk wisdom, this practice extends to sleep itself. Before crossing into the sanctuary of night, one must also leave the shoes of the day at the door. Shoes carry more than feet. They carry journeys. They hold the dirt of places we have walked, the pressures of steps we have taken, the strain of distances covered. In the same way, our minds carry the weight of the day, conversations, decisions, emotions, and expectations. To enter rest while still wearing these is to bring the dust of the road into the sanctuary of sleep. The teaching is clear. If you want the night to be pure, you must first remove what you have carried. There is a tale of a weary traveler who came to a monastery seeking food and rest. As he reached the door, the master stopped him and said, "Remove your shoes." The traveler obeyed, but the master pointed again and said, "Now, remove the road as well." Confused, the traveler asked what he meant. The master replied, "Your feet are clean, but your heart is still walking. Leave the road outside, or you will never rest within." The story reveals that rituals of release are not only physical but mental. Taking off the shoes becomes a metaphor for putting down the endless road of thought. In psychological terms, this reflects the importance of transitions. The human mind struggles when boundaries are blurred, when work seeps into night, when conversations replay into silence, when unresolved tasks haunt the body at rest. Creating symbolic acts of closure helps the brain shift states. Just as removing shoes signals the body that it has entered a safe space, intentional rituals before bed tell the mind that the day is complete. Without such acts, the nervous system remains alert, holding the weight of the road. Monks often describe shoes as containers of karma, holding the imprints of where one has been. To remove them before stepping into the sacred space is to acknowledge that the past steps need not dictate the present moment. Applied to sleep, this means recognizing that what you walk through today, mistakes, victories, conflicts, does not need to follow you into the night. You may acknowledge them, but you do not need to carry them across the threshold. Science supports this practice in surprising ways. Studies on bedtime routines show that people who engage in simple symbolic gestures, such as washing hands, dimming lights, or writing down the day's events, fall asleep faster and wake more refreshed. These acts serve as cues to the brain, much like removing shoes, that one has left behind the outer world. The physical act helps the mind believe what it might otherwise resist, that it is time to rest. There is a folk custom in parts of Japan where travelers, upon arriving at inns, remove their shoes and lightly tap them together before placing them neatly at the entrance. Elders say this gesture is not only to keep the house clean, but to release the dust of worry and conflict. The act of tapping symbolizes shaking off the invisible burdens that cling to us. In this way, the shoes become not only footwear, but a container for what we choose not to bring inside. When applied to rest, this custom teaches us to tap off the lingering anxieties before lying down. Another story speaks of a pilgrim who traveled with shoes worn thin. When he finally reached a temple, he placed them outside and bowed deeply, thanking them for carrying him but not asking them to follow him inside. The lesson is humility and gratitude, to acknowledge the day's journey, to thank the body and the mind for carrying us, but also to know when to let them rest. Gratitude itself becomes a way of removing shoes, releasing struggle with appreciation rather than resentment. The symbolism reaches deeper when we see the bedroom as a sacred hall. Just as temples are kept pure by removing shoes, the space of sleep is kept sacred by removing mental burdens. To treat the bed as a sanctuary means not cluttering it with devices, arguments, or unfinished tasks. This is not about strict rules, but about honoring the threshold. If you want the night to restore you, you must treat it as sacred ground. Psychologists studying sleep quality often emphasize sleep associations, the way the brain links bed with activity. When beds are used for work or worry, the brain struggles to shift into rest. But when beds are linked with safety, calm, and release, sleep becomes easier. The practice of symbolically removing shoes reinforces this association. It teaches the body and mind. This space is different. This space is sacred. This space is for renewal only. There is also wisdom in the way shoes rest once removed. They are set aside, not destroyed. This teaches us that letting go does not mean denial. The tasks of the day, the struggles, the journeys, they remain, waiting for tomorrow. But they need not enter the night. To rest does not mean erasing responsibility, but pausing it. Shoes remind us that we can pick up the road again when dawn comes. Tonight, however, belongs to sanctuary. From a physiological perspective, this pause allows the body to heal. Stress hormones decline, heart rate slows, muscles repair, the immune system strengthens. All of this requires the body to believe it is safe, that the road has truly been left outside. Carrying the road inward keeps the body in defense, preventing the deep healing of sleep. To remove the shoes of the day is to allow the body to stop defending and start restoring. Another lesson emerges when we consider the shape of shoes. They are molded to protect feet against rough terrain. Yet once removed, the feet are free, soft, vulnerable, connected to the ground. In this vulnerability lies healing. To rest fully, we must remove not only physical shoes, but also the psychological armor we wear, roles, defenses, identities. Night is not the time to be strong or perform. It is the time to be bare, soft, and open to renewal. There is a practice in some Buddhist traditions where practitioners pause before bed and visualize placing their worries, regrets, and unfinished duties into their shoes. They then picture leaving those shoes outside the bedroom door. This visualization is powerful because the mind responds to symbols as if they were physical. By placing the weight into the shoes, you free yourself to cross into sleep unburdened. In the morning, you may choose to put them back on or not. The choice becomes conscious rather than automatic. In many folk tales, pilgrims who refused to remove their shoes were barred from sacred halls. The lesson was not about cleanliness, but about pride. To cling to the road is to deny the need for release. In our own lives, To refuse rest, to carry everything into the night, is to deny our need for sanctuary. The consequence is exhaustion, confusion, and suffering. But when we humble ourselves enough to set the shoes aside, we receive the gift of restoration. And so, the pilgrim's shoes left at the door become a timeless metaphor. They teach us that before stepping into the sanctuary of sleep, we must acknowledge the weight we carry and release it. We must treat rest as sacred, create rituals of transition, and honor the threshold between outer life and inner renewal. Each night becomes a pilgrimage, each bed a temple, each act of laying down a step into sanctuary. By leaving the shoes of the day behind, you enter the night lighter, freer, and ready to be restored. Leaving the pilgrim's shoes at the door has shown us the wisdom of releasing what clings to the body and the mind, of honoring the threshold between the dust of the road and the sanctuary of rest. Yet once we step across that threshold, there arises another challenge: what to do with the vulnerability of being unarmed, of standing bare without the armor of the day. In Buddhist-inspired folklore, this challenge is expressed through the story of the celestial carp, a fish that must leap across a moonlit stream to find freedom. Its story speaks of courage not in force, but in the willingness to rise from water into air, to embrace risk, and to discover that vulnerability itself is a form of strength. The carp has long held symbolic meaning in Buddhist and Asian traditions. In rivers, it swims against the current, never turning back, enduring obstacles with persistence. But the celestial carp goes further. It is said to leap toward the light of the moon reflected on the stream, crossing from one realm into another. In this act lies a teaching about the courage to move beyond comfort. Water is safe, familiar, and sustaining, yet the carp must leave it, even briefly, to discover a freedom greater than what it has always known. In the same way, we are often asked to step beyond the familiar patterns of thought and protection in order to grow, to heal, and to rest. There is a tale of a fisherman who once watched a carp leap from a stream at night, its scales glimmering like silver under the moon. He asked a monk nearby why the fish would risk leaving the safety of water. The monk replied, "Because it knows that only by rising above its element can it glimpse a greater world." The fisherman understood that the leap itself was an act of courage, not for survival alone, but for vision. For us, the leap happens when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, when we step beyond the habits of control and into the openness where rest and renewal dwell. Courage in vulnerability is not about heroism in the conventional sense. It is not charging into battle or conquering fear with force. Instead, it is the quiet bravery of allowing the self to be exposed, of acknowledging uncertainty, of trusting the process even without guarantees. Just as the carp must trust the water to catch it again after the leap, we must trust life to hold us when we release control. In the context of rest, this means letting go of defenses, the endless planning, the vigilance, the replaying of mistakes, and allowing the night to carry us. Science has shown that vulnerability is essential for well-being. Studies on emotional openness reveal that suppressing feelings leads to higher stress, poorer health, and disrupted sleep. By contrast, those who practice openness, sharing emotions, accepting imperfection, embracing uncertainty, experience greater resilience and deeper rest. The carp's leap is a metaphor for this openness. To stay submerged in constant defense is to remain safe but limited. To leap is to expose oneself, and in that exposure, to find freedom. In folk traditions, the celestial carp is also connected to transformation. Legends tell of carp that leap high enough to reach the heavens, becoming dragons. The leap itself is the bridge from ordinary to extraordinary. Applied to life, this means that moments of vulnerability, times when we step beyond what is safe, can be the very moments that lead to transformation. Rest, too, requires transformation, from wakefulness to sleep, from tension to ease, from control to surrender. Each night we enact this leap, crossing from one realm to another, trusting the unseen. The carp story also teaches persistence. Many fish may try to leap, but only a few succeed. The courage lies not only in leaping once, but in continuing despite falls. This reflects our own practice of rest. Some nights, sleep may not come easily. The mind may resist, the body may hold tension. But to persist in the practice of letting go, to try again with patience, is to embody the carp spirit. Each attempt is a leap, and each leap teaches courage. There is another parable of a young monk who was afraid of failure. His teacher took him to a stream and pointed to carp trying to leap up a small waterfall. Many fell back, but they continued again and again. "Do you see?" the teacher said. "They are not ashamed to fall. Their courage is not in succeeding, but in continuing." The monk realized that his own fear of mistakes was what bound him, not the mistakes themselves. In the same way, anxiety before sleep often comes from fearing failure to rest. Yet if we approach rest like the carp, without shame in the attempt, with persistence in practice, sleep becomes less a struggle and more a natural leap. The moonlit stream itself carries symbolism. Water reflects the moon, creating a vision that draws the carp upward. The reflection is not the moon itself, but a guide, a light pointing beyond. In Buddhist thought, such reflections remind us of illusions, things that appear real but are fleeting. The carp leaps not at the moon, but at its reflection, yet the act still leads to transformation. For us, this means that even small acts of courage, even leaps toward imperfect goals, can open the way to freedom. We need not wait for perfect conditions to release ourselves. Even imperfect attempts carry power. From a scientific lens, the act of courage releases tension. Psychologists studying exposure therapy found that facing vulnerability reduces fear over time, retraining the nervous system to respond calmly. Each leap into openness makes the next easier. In rest, this means practicing vulnerability by allowing thoughts to rise without judgment, by letting the body soften even when fears linger, by trusting that release will come with practice. Over time, the nervous system learns to let go more easily, and sleep deepens. The carp's leap also symbolizes transcendence of boundaries. Fish belong to water, yet in leaping, they briefly enter the realm of air. This crossing shows that identity is not fixed, that roles and states are fluid. We too are not bound only to activity or thought. We can cross into stillness, into rest, into silence. The leap shows us that we are more than our routines, more than our anxieties. Sleep is the nightly act of transcending the boundaries of wakefulness, stepping into another realm of being. There is a folk saying that the carp leaps highest when the water is calm. This teaches that courage often arises not from chaos, but from inner steadiness. To cultivate calm through breath, mindfulness, or gentle ritual prepares us for the leap of vulnerability. Just as the carp gathers strength before rising, we gather inner calm before releasing into rest. The practice of slowing down before bed, of quieting the mind, is the preparation for this leap. In another tale, an elder told children watching carp at night, "Do not laugh when they fall. Each leap is sacred, for in each attempt lies freedom." This echoes the truth that vulnerability itself, regardless of outcome, is courage. When we allow ourselves to be open, even if sleep does not come instantly, we are still practicing freedom from control. We are still leaping toward the moonlit stream. The celestial carp thus becomes a symbol not only of courage, but of the delicate strength found in vulnerability. It shows that freedom is not won by endless defense, but by daring to rise beyond it. It teaches that transformation often comes through exposure, through persistence, through trust in what cannot be guaranteed. Each night, as we lay down and release control, we too leap across the moonlit stream, leaving behind the safety of constant activity and entering the freedom of rest. To honor the carp is to honor the courage in ourselves, not the loud courage of conquest, but the quiet bravery of letting go, of being seen, of allowing imperfection, of trusting the night. It is to recognize that vulnerability is not weakness, but the very condition for growth and renewal. In this way, the leap of the celestial carp becomes our own, teaching us how to cross from the road of the day into the sanctuary of sleep, and how to rise again, renewed, when dawn returns. The leap of the celestial carp has taught us that freedom often comes through the courage to rise from what is familiar, to step into vulnerability, and to trust that the current will catch us again. Yet even the strongest leap must eventually return to stillness. After every act of movement comes a pause, and it is in this pause that transformation deepens. Monks have long known that true power does not lie only in the words of their sutra chants, but in the silence that surrounds them. The spaces between sound carry their own wisdom, teaching that rest itself can become meditation, and that healing flows most strongly, not in constant effort, but in the quiet that follows. When chants echo through a temple, their rhythm creates waves of sound, but between the words there is a gap, a moment of emptiness that holds just as much meaning as the syllables. The silence is not absence but presence. It is where the heart feels the resonance, where the body absorbs the vibration, where the mind settles. To rest is to enter this same silence. Sleep is not made of words or actions, but of the pause that lies between days, the quiet space where being replaces doing. In many traditions, students are taught to pay attention not only to the sound of a chant, but to the stillness that follows. A master once told his disciple, "The sutra ends, but the silence continues. If you can hear the silence, you will understand more than the words could ever teach." The disciple later described that silence as the first time he truly felt at peace, as though the world had stopped pressing upon him. In the same way, when we lie down to rest, the healing often begins not in what we think or do, but in the space we allow ourselves to enter. Modern neuroscience supports this understanding. Studies show that silence activates brain regions associated with self-reflection and emotional regulation. Even short periods of quiet reduce stress hormones, lower blood pressure, and improve sleep quality. Silence is not empty, it is restorative. The nervous system uses it to reset, to repair, to balance. In a world filled with constant noise, the absence of sound becomes medicine. Pauses also teach patience. In chanting, the silence between phrases cannot be rushed. It arrives in its own time, and those listening must simply wait. This waiting is not wasted, but sacred. Applied to rest, this means that sleep too must be received with patience. Many grow anxious when sleep does not come immediately, yet the silence teaches us to wait without struggle. The pause has its own purpose, and to honor it is to find calm even before sleep arrives. There is a story from a temple in Korea where a monk led chanting each evening. After every verse, he extended the pause longer than expected, so long that novices fidgeted in discomfort. When asked why, he replied, "Because in that silence, your heart reveals itself. The chant is the key, but the silence is the door." His lesson was that we often run from silence, filling it with thought or movement, but in doing so, we miss its healing. By learning to rest in the pause, we discover that silence itself is a teacher. The silence between chants also embodies impermanence. Sound arises, echoes, and fades. No note lasts forever, and no silence is final. Each pause gives birth to the next sound, and each sound returns to silence. This rhythm mirrors the cycle of life and rest. Each day rises with activity, fades into night, and returns again. To resist silence is to resist half of life itself. When we accept silence as natural, we ease into rest without fear, trusting the cycle to continue. In daily life, the practice of silence can be cultivated in small ways. Setting aside moments without music, without screens, without speech, allows the mind to reset. These pauses, though brief, prepare the body for deeper rest at night. Just as monks integrate silence into chanting, we can integrate quiet into our routines, letting it become part of our rhythm rather than something unusual. Over time, silence becomes familiar, even comforting. The power of silence is also relational. In chanting, the shared pause unites everyone. Listeners breathe together, hearts synchronize, and a collective stillness arises. In families or communities, silence can serve the same purpose. Sitting quietly with loved ones, without the need for words, creates bonds deeper than conversation. To share silence before sleep, perhaps through a few breaths together, can foster calm and connection, easing the transition into rest. There is also a spiritual dimension. In Buddhism, ultimate truth is often described as beyond words, beyond concepts. Sutras point toward it, but they cannot contain it. The silence between chants is said to hint at this truth more clearly than language ever could. For rest, this means that true healing cannot always be explained or measured. It happens in the unseen, in the pauses, in the surrender beyond understanding. To allow silence is to allow mystery, to let healing occur without demanding to know how. Science too confirms that the brain requires downtime for integration. During quiet wakefulness and sleep, the brain consolidates memories, organizes experiences, and generates insight. Without silence, these processes are disrupted. The silence between chants mirrors this biological truth. Pauses are not empty, but essential. Rest, in its deepest sense, is the body and mind's silence between the chants of daily life. In some folk tales, silence itself was personified as a gentle spirit who walked between the notes of chanting, carrying away worries and returning peace. Villagers believed that if you listened closely during the pauses, you could hear your own burdens being lifted. Though symbolic, this belief reflects a deep human need to see silence not as void but as active, as a friend that heals. To bring this view into our own nights is to see stillness not as emptiness but as presence. The silence between sutra chants teaches us to value what is often overlooked, to honor pauses as much as action, to see rest as sacred rather than wasted. It reminds us that healing is not always loud, not always visible, but often found in the quiet spaces where nothing seems to happen. Each night, when you close your eyes, you are entering that pause, that sacred silence between the chants of your life. To rest deeply is to hear that silence and let it work within you, carrying you into renewal without struggle. The silence between sutra chants revealed how healing does not only live in sound, but in the space around it, in the pauses that allow the heart to settle and the mind to reset. Yet silence itself opens the doorway to another mystery, one that unfolds not in waking hours but in the hidden landscapes of dreams. Within these unseen depths lies an image treasured in Buddhist imagination, the Bodhi tree, under which the Buddha awakened, extending its roots deeper into the earth even while the branches above remain still. To dream of such roots is to glimpse how the subconscious heals in ways we cannot see, how growth continues below the surface while the outer self rests. Roots have long been a symbol of stability, depth, and unseen strength. The Bodhi tree's roots in particular represent the grounding of wisdom into the soil of existence. In dreams, these roots often appear as living forces, spreading silently through darkness, anchoring life with quiet persistence. This imagery reminds us that healing often takes place beyond awareness. Just as roots expand unseen, your body and mind repair themselves while you sleep, weaving resilience into the depths of your being without requiring your conscious effort. There is a story told of a monk who dreamed night after night of sitting beneath a vast tree. Each dream was the same. While the branches swayed gently, the roots stretched deeper into the earth. At first, he did not understand the meaning, but with time, he realized the tree reflected himself. Though his outward practice seemed still, beneath the surface his discipline, patience, and compassion were taking root. His teacher later told him, "The strongest growth often happens where eyes cannot see." In the same way, when we sleep, we may think nothing is happening, yet the deepest healing occurs in silence, beneath awareness. Modern science confirms this truth. During deep sleep, tissues repair, immune cells multiply, and the brain's lymphatic system clears toxins built up during the day. Emotional processing happens in dream states, reorganizing memory and softening trauma. None of this is visible, yet it shapes health profoundly. Like roots nourishing the tree from below, sleep nourishes us from within. To dream of roots is to acknowledge this hidden labor, to trust the subconscious and the body to do what the waking mind cannot. The Bodhi tree itself carries the ultimate symbolism of awakening. Under its shade, Siddhartha Gautama faced his doubts, his fears, and his temptations until he reached enlightenment. But what made the tree sacred was not only its branches but its roots, anchoring it through storms and droughts. In dreams, roots often signify that the foundations of wisdom are being strengthened. Even when life above feels uncertain or restless, there is growth below. Rest allows these roots to spread, ensuring stability when challenges return. There is also a lesson in surrender. Roots grow by yielding to soil, winding around rocks, finding paths of least resistance. They do not push straight through every obstacle but adapt with patience. Dreams of roots remind us that healing unfolds in the same way. It may not follow the straight path we expect, but it finds its way nonetheless. To trust your subconscious healing is to allow this winding process, knowing that even if you cannot see progress, it is happening. In folk tales, villagers often spoke of sacred trees whispering in dreams, telling them where to plant crops or how to resolve disputes. These stories reflected a deep trust in the wisdom of roots. People believed that trees, anchored so firmly, held knowledge of endurance. In modern terms, this mirrors how dreams often reveal hidden insights. The subconscious, working through symbols and images, provides guidance that the waking mind cannot reach. Rest is therefore not idle but fertile, allowing the roots of intuition to grow. The imagery of roots also speaks to interconnectedness. Beneath forests, trees share nutrients and signals through vast root systems. In Buddhist thought, this mirrors interdependence. No being exists in isolation. Dreams of roots spreading may reflect the subconscious healing of relationships, the unseen ways we are connected to others. Sleep becomes not only personal restoration, but communal balance, as the subconscious processes bonds, grievances, and compassion. Psychological research supports this. Studies show that during REM sleep, social and emotional memories are consolidated, shaping how we relate to others. This unseen process strengthens empathy and reduces reactivity. Just as roots feed not only one tree but the entire forest, subconscious healing during rest nurtures our relationships and connections. Another aspect of the dream of roots is depth. While branches reach upward toward light, roots delve downward into darkness. This duality teaches balance. Growth is not only reaching higher but also sinking deeper. Dreams of roots remind us that descending into the subconscious, into unacknowledged feelings and forgotten memories, is part of healing. Sleep provides the safe space for this descent, a place where the mind can process what is too heavy for daylight. There is a parable of a novice who feared his dark dreams, thinking they showed weakness. His teacher told him, "Roots grow in darkness, not in light. Without them, no tree stands." The novice came to understand that even disturbing dreams were part of growth, the subconscious working through hidden burdens. The healing was not always gentle, but it was necessary. Rest is the soil where such growth takes place. From a physiological perspective, dreams often integrate experiences and reduce emotional charge. What feels overwhelming by day can become softened by night. This mirrors the way roots transform harsh soil into nourishment. The subconscious takes the rough fragments of experience and reshapes them into resilience. To dream of roots is to trust that even pain can be composted into growth. Roots also embody patience. They grow slowly, unseen, often over years. In the same way, healing does not always reveal itself quickly. Dreams of roots remind us to honor this slow work. Each night contributes a little more. Each rest adds depth. To rush healing is to pull at roots before they are ready. To trust the process is to let them spread naturally. The Bodhi tree's roots in dreams symbolize anchoring during change. While branches may sway with winds, roots hold firm. For those who feel unstable, such dreams are reminders that the subconscious is quietly stabilizing, weaving strength beneath turbulence. Sleep anchors us even when waking life feels uncertain. In practice, you can honor this teaching by approaching sleep as fertile soil rather than wasted time. Instead of resenting rest, treat it as the ground where roots deepen. Journaling dreams, meditating on images of trees, or simply reflecting on growth beneath awareness can help cultivate this perspective. By doing so, you strengthen trust in the unseen healing of sleep. And so, the dream of the Bodhi tree's roots reveals that rest is never empty. Beneath the stillness of night, the subconscious works with patience and depth, anchoring wisdom, transforming experience, and weaving resilience. Like roots spreading unseen, your healing unfolds quietly, preparing you to rise stronger with each dawn. To surrender to sleep is to let the roots grow, to trust the soil of silence, and to allow the unseen to carry you toward wholeness. The dream of the Bodhi tree's roots reminded us that growth often happens unseen, that the subconscious works quietly in the depths while the surface rests. Yet not all hidden places are soft soil. Some are hollow chambers where every sound returns amplified, where silence itself has a voice. In Buddhist stories, caves became such places, settings where hermits withdrew from the world, not to escape, but to confront the echoes within. The cave does not invent voices, it only reflects what is brought into it. In the same way, the night reflects the contents of the mind, amplifying thoughts and feelings we tried to bury. Stories of hermits entering caves teach us how to face these echoes, how to listen rather than resist, and how to find wisdom in the reflections of the soul. A tale is told of a solitary monk who spent months in a mountain cave. At first, he was tormented by the sound of his own chanting, bouncing back at him, louder and stranger than when it left his lips. He thought the cave mocked him, but over time, he realized that the echo was not an enemy but a teacher. Each word he spoke came back to him, altered yet recognizable, showing him aspects of himself he had ignored. The cave revealed not new voices but his own. In the same way, the stillness of night often returns our inner voices with greater clarity. Worries grow louder, memories replay, emotions echo through the mind. These echoes are not new burdens, they are reflections waiting to be heard. Psychology describes a similar process. In silence, the brain's default mode network activates, bringing forward unresolved thoughts, regrets, and desires. At night, when distractions fade, these voices rise. Many experience this as insomnia or restlessness, but it can also be seen as the cave of the mind reflecting what lies within. If approached with patience, these echoes become insights rather than disturbances. Sleep then follows naturally, as the mind no longer struggles to silence its reflections but listens to them with compassion. The hermit's cave was often described as a mirror for the soul. Whatever he carried inside would return magnified. If he entered with anger, the cave seemed hostile. If he entered with calm, it became serene. This reflects a profound truth. The outer world often mirrors the state of the inner. Night itself is such a cave. If you enter it clinging to turmoil, the silence amplifies it. But if you enter with openness, the same silence becomes healing. The cave does not change, you do. Another story tells of a hermit who grew frightened by strange voices in the darkness of his cave. When he ran to his teacher for help, the master laughed and said, "The cave has no tongue, it only returns your own." The hermit returned, and with time, he learned to greet the echoes as old companions. He discovered that fear fades when you stop running from your own voice. At night, when thoughts echo loudly, the same principle applies. Fear grows when we try to silence them, but when we listen, the echo loses its power. From a scientific perspective, acknowledging inner echoes reduces their hold. Cognitive therapies emphasize naming emotions, speaking them aloud or writing them down as a way to lessen their intensity. The act of recognition transforms echoes into insights. This parallels the hermit's practice. By hearing the cave's reflection clearly, he turned fear into understanding. The cave also symbolizes depth and darkness. Unlike open fields or mountains, caves descend inward. They represent the parts of ourselves we rarely visit: memories, traumas, unspoken desires. Hermits who chose caves understood that spiritual growth required confronting these depths. For modern minds, night offers a similar descent. Dreams and midnight thoughts often bring up what daylight pushes aside. Though uncomfortable, this descent is not punishment but healing. Roots cannot deepen without soil. Wisdom cannot deepen without facing shadows. A parable describes a hermit who chanted every day until the cave seemed to chant back even when he was silent. At first, he thought he was haunted, but later he realized that the repetition had transformed the cave itself into a companion. His practice had filled the space with resonance, and now silence carried it back. This teaches us that what we put into our minds returns in echoes. If we fill the day with anger, the night will echo it. If we fill it with kindness, the echoes soothe. Rest is shaped not only by how we surrender at night, but by what we carry through the day. Dream research mirrors this. Sleep often consolidates what we focus on before bed. Positive practices, gratitude, gentle breathing, calm reflection lead to more restorative sleep and even kinder dreams. Negative preoccupations echo through the night as restlessness or nightmares. The cave of the mind reflects what we offer it. To shape the echo is to choose carefully what we bring into rest. The cave also offers a lesson about endurance. Hermits often spent years in isolation, listening to echoes until their fear dissolved into clarity. They discovered that the echo does not harm, it only persists until we accept it. Similarly, the repetitive thoughts at night may seem endless, but with patience, they fade. Anxiety about them feeds the cycle, while acceptance breaks it. The cave teaches that echoes are only as frightening as our resistance to them. There is also beauty in how caves preserve sound. A chant once sung lingers faintly in the walls long after the voice has stopped. This reflects how experiences leave impressions in us. Even when events pass, their echoes remain in memory. Healing involves listening to these echoes and releasing their weight. Ignoring them only leaves them trapped in the walls of the mind. By resting with openness, we allow echoes to fade naturally, freeing space for new resonance. Some folk traditions speak of caves as sacred wombs, places where the earth itself holds life in gestation. Hermits entered not to escape, but to be reborn, emerging with deeper wisdom. Night functions in the same way. Entering rest is entering the cave of the subconscious, where echoes are heard, processed, and transformed. Each morning is an emergence, a rebirth shaped by what we allowed the night to teach us. And so the hermit and the echoing cave remind us that rest is not only stillness, but reflection. Night magnifies what we bring into it, offering us the chance to listen more deeply. If we resist, the echoes grow louder. If we listen, they dissolve into insight. The cave does not change, we do. Sleep becomes not escape, but dialogue, a chance to hear the soul's reflections and allow them to guide us toward renewal. The echoing cave reminded us that what we resist only grows louder, and that true peace comes not from silencing, but from listening to what returns to us. Once the echoes have softened and the heart has steadied, we find ourselves on the ground again, seeking something to rest upon. In temples, that ground is often covered not with gold or stone, but with woven mats, simple objects crafted by hands, yet carrying stories of kindness passed from generation to generation. These mats are not merely surfaces for sitting or lying down. They are threads of compassion woven into form, reminders that rest becomes deeper when it is supported by kindness. A mat in a temple holds the weight of countless monks and pilgrims. Each thread has touched countless lives, absorbing prayers, tears, and moments of stillness. To lie upon such a mat is to be held by compassion itself. The lesson here is that rest is not only physical but also emotional, and compassion is the fabric that softens it. When we rest upon compassion, whether given by others or cultivated within, we release the hardness that prevents true healing. There is a story told of a village woman who spent years weaving mats for the local monastery. She used simple reeds, yet she prayed over each strand, blessing those who would sit upon it. When a weary traveler came to the temple and lay down, he felt a peace he had never known. The monks told him that it was not the reeds, but the compassion woven into them that brought him comfort. This story reminds us that kindness has tangible power. Even the simplest object, when filled with compassion, becomes a vessel of rest. Compassion softens suffering in ways that force never can. Science supports this truth. Studies on compassion-focused meditation show that practicing kindness toward oneself and others reduces stress, lowers cortisol, and increases feelings of safety conditions essential for sleep. Just as mats soften the hardness of the floor, compassion softens the hardness of the heart, allowing the body to release tension and surrender to rest. Without compassion, even the softest bed feels uneasy. With it, even a simple mat can cradle you into peace. The woven mat also teaches about connection. Each strand by itself is fragile, but woven together they form something strong. Compassion works the same way. A single act may feel small, but when combined with others it becomes a network of support. At night, when worries often feel overwhelming, remembering compassion reconnects us to this web. We realize we are not alone. Others suffer and heal just as we do. This shared humanity eases the isolation of struggle, replacing it with belonging, a condition that makes rest possible. Another story tells of a monk who carried a mat wherever he went. When asked why, he said, "This mat reminds me that I am always held by the kindness of others." The reeds grew by the river, the weaver gave her time, the teacher blessed it. When I sit on their compassion. The lesson here is gratitude. To rest deeply, we must acknowledge the unseen kindnesses that support us: food grown by farmers, roofs built by workers, even the bed we lie upon shaped by many hands. Gratitude turns rest into reverence, allowing the heart to soften. In modern life, compassion toward oneself is often neglected. People judge themselves harshly, carrying guilt and self-criticism into bed. These are like thorns hidden beneath a mat, preventing ease. The teaching of the woven mat reminds us to replace judgment with compassion, to speak gently to ourselves as we drift into sleep, saying simple words like, "You did your best today, rest now," can transform rest. Neuroscience shows that self-compassion activates soothing systems in the brain, calming the fight-or-flight response and promoting relaxation. Compassion literally changes the brain's chemistry to support sleep. The act of weaving itself carries wisdom. Each thread crosses another, creating strength in overlap. Compassion, too, is built through practice, one act at a time, interwoven until it becomes part of who we are. Rest can be seen as part of this. Weaving, each night we restore not only our bodies but our capacity for kindness. When we neglect rest, compassion frays. When we honor it, compassion strengthens. In this way, sleep is not selfish but service. By caring for ourselves, we preserve the ability to care for others. There is also a symbolic teaching in how mats are placed on the ground. They do not elevate or separate, but bring us close to the earth. Compassion, too, grounds us. It humbles pride, softens anger, and reminds us of our shared fragility. To rest on compassion is to accept our place in the larger fabric of life, not above, not below, but interwoven with all beings. This humility eases the restless striving of the mind, replacing it with calm. In folk belief, mats were sometimes said to absorb sorrow. People would sit on them to pray, and when they rose, they felt lighter, as if the mat had taken part of their burden. This metaphor reflects how compassion works. When we extend kindness, we absorb a little of another's suffering, lessening their load. When we give compassion to ourselves, we absorb our own pain with gentleness rather than resistance. In both cases, the burden is softened, allowing space for rest. Another parable tells of a child who wept each night, unable to sleep from fear. An elder gave him a mat and told him, "This mat has heard many prayers. It will hear yours too." The child whispered his fears into the mat and found himself drifting into slumber. The lesson is that compassion listens. It does not always solve or erase problems, but its presence allows fear to loosen. A compassionate heart, like a woven mat, can absorb what words cannot resolve. In practical life, we can weave compassion into our nightly rituals. This may mean offering gratitude for the day, forgiving ourselves for mistakes, or wishing peace for others before closing our eyes. These small acts soften the mind, weaving kindness into the very fabric of sleep. Over time, the brain associates rest not with worry but with compassion, deepening its restorative power. And so, the woven mat of compassion teaches us that rest is not only physical comfort but emotional safety. To sleep well is to lie upon threads of kindness, woven from gratitude, patience, and shared humanity. The mat reminds us that strength comes from interconnection, that burdens can be absorbed by gentleness, and that compassion, both given and received, is the ground of true rest. Each night, when you close your eyes, you are weaving another thread, creating a fabric that will hold you and others in kindness, until morning brings you back renewed. The woven mat of compassion reminded us that rest deepens when it is softened by kindness, that the very ground we lie upon can cradle us when it is woven with care. Yet even with such a foundation, the body still carries pain, the heart still stirs, and the mind still seeks comfort in the darkness. To ease this, Buddhist devotion turns often to breath, not as a simple function of survival but as a prayer, a living bridge between body and spirit. In rare accounts, devotees speak of the healing breath of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of boundless compassion, whose name is carried gently on each inhale and exhale, transforming the act of breathing into medicine for the soul and a doorway into sleep. Breath has always been a central focus in Buddhist practice, seen as the thread that ties awareness to the present moment. To breathe consciously is to anchor oneself in life's rhythm, to be reminded that every inhale is receiving and every exhale is release. The devotees who invoked Avalokiteshvara through breath discovered that this rhythm could also carry compassion directly into their suffering. On the in-breath, they silently called upon the presence of compassion, and on the out-breath, they released their pain, fear, or fatigue. Over time, the breath itself became a channel of healing, carrying the mind into peace and the body into rest. There is a story from Tibet of a woman who could not sleep after losing her child. Each night, grief rose so sharply that her body trembled. An elder monk taught her to breathe the name of Avalokiteshvara. On the inhale, to hear in her heart the sound Om Mani, and on the exhale, Padme Hum. At first it felt mechanical, but slowly, the repetition became soothing. She described it as though each breath wrapped her in comfort, the pain loosening with every exhale. In time, she fell into gentle sleep, not because her sorrow vanished, but because compassion entered her breath and gave her permission to rest. This teaching reveals that healing is not about erasing suffering, but holding it differently. Breath prayers work by transforming the act of breathing, something automatic and often unnoticed, into a mindful, compassionate rhythm. Science supports this. Studies show that slow, rhythmic breathing calms the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering heart rate, easing blood pressure, and releasing endorphins that reduce pain. Pairing breath with compassionate intention deepens this effect, creating not only physical calm, but emotional safety. Sleep becomes possible because the body and mind finally feel held. The healing breath of Avalokiteshvara also carries symbolic meaning. Avalokiteshvara is said to embody infinite compassion, listening to the cries of all beings. To breathe his name is to align one's own suffering with that vast compassion, to feel less alone in pain. At night, when suffering feels most isolating, this alignment is powerful. Breath becomes both personal and universal, a reminder that countless beings breathe with you, suffer with you, and heal with you. Rest becomes part of a larger fabric of compassion. Another story speaks of a monk who suffered chronic illness. He found himself restless, unable to sleep through the pain. His teacher instructed him to breathe compassion not only for himself, but for all who suffered similar pain. On each inhale, he pictured drawing in strength. On each exhale, he offered compassion to unseen others. He later said, this practice shifted his focus from his own body to the shared humanity of pain, softening his suffering and carrying him into rest. This reflects a core Buddhist principle that compassion expands when it includes others, and in expanding, it heals the self as well. From a psychological perspective, this practice is profoundly effective. Research into compassion meditation shows that extending kindness to others reduces personal suffering, increasing feelings of connection and lowering rumination. When practiced with breath, this compassion is embodied, felt physically with each inhale and exhale. Sleep then arrives naturally, because the mind is no longer consumed by pain or fear, but lulled by compassion's rhythm. Breath prayers also teach patience. Unlike sudden relief, their healing comes gradually, breath by breath, night after night. This patience itself becomes part of the cure, teaching that healing is not a single event, but an ongoing process. In sleep, the body and mind learn to trust this process, letting go of urgency and resting in the slow rhythm of compassion. The imagery of Avalokiteshvara's breath also connects to sound. In temples, chants to the Bodhisattva echo like waves, each one rising and falling like breath. Devotees describe the sound as if the universe itself is breathing. To align personal breath with this cosmic rhythm is to feel part of something vast, dissolving loneliness. Sleep in this state is not mere rest, but union with the larger flow of compassion. There is a folk account from Nepal of an elder who taught children to whisper Avalokiteshvara's name on their breath whenever they felt fear at night. The children said the practice made them feel as though a gentle presence was beside them, calming their hearts until they drifted to sleep. This reveals how breath prayers can serve as anchors for safety. When repeated regularly, they condition the mind to associate breath with comfort, transforming night from a place of fear to a sanctuary of healing. In practice, this can be done simply. One might lie down, place a hand on the chest, and breathe slowly, inhaling with a sense of receiving compassion and exhaling with a sense of releasing pain. Repeating this rhythm gradually shifts the nervous system into calm, and with calm, sleep enters. The words may be Avalokiteshvara's mantra, or they may simply be silent reminders like peace on the inhale and release on the exhale. What matters is not the specific syllables, but the compassionate intention carried on the breath. The healing breath also carries the lesson of presence. Each breath occurs only in the moment. It cannot be hoarded or postponed. To focus on breath is to return to now, away from regrets of the past or fears of the future. At night, this is crucial. Anxiety thrives on what has been or what may come. Breath anchors you in the present, where rest is possible. By linking it to Avalokiteshvara's compassion, presence becomes gentleness, not discipline, a sanctuary for the restless heart. From a biological standpoint, breath practices before sleep increase melatonin, the hormone of rest. They also balance oxygen and carbon dioxide levels, preventing the shallow breathing that often accompanies stress. This explains why devotees felt sleep come more easily when paired with breath prayers. Their bodies were biologically shifting into the state most conducive to healing. And so, the healing breath of Avalokiteshvara teaches us that rest is not only the absence of activity, but the presence of compassion carried in each inhale and exhale. To breathe with awareness is to turn an ordinary act into prayer, to transform pain into softness, to invite sleep not through force but through kindness. Each night becomes a chance to align with compassion's rhythm, to let Avalokiteshvara's breath guide you into stillness, and to awaken renewed, having been held gently in the embrace of infinite care. The healing breath of Avalokiteshvara showed us how compassion can be carried on every inhale and exhale, how pain can be softened, not by resistance, but by allowing breath itself to become prayer. Yet when the breath slows, when the body grows still, another presence enters the night. For countless generations, monks and poets have spoken of the moon not simply as a light in the sky, but as a witness, a silent companion who has watched over humanity's deepest moments. Legends tell of the moon that watched the Buddha on the night of his enlightenment, its soft glow resting on the Bodhi tree as he discovered freedom from suffering. The moon did not speak, yet its quiet light offered guidance in the dark, a reminder that even in silence we are not alone. The moon's role in Buddhist tradition is more than symbolic illumination. It represents clarity in darkness, the gentle wisdom that does not overwhelm but reveals slowly. Just as the sun can be too harsh, the moon's light is soft enough for contemplation, steady enough to guide the pilgrim's path, and distant enough to invite humility. The story of the moon that witnessed the Buddha's awakening reminds us that guidance does not always arrive as thunderous revelation. Sometimes it comes as a quiet presence, a steady glow that reassures us in the night. There is a tale told among devotees that as the Buddha sat in deep meditation under the Bodhi tree, the moon looked on, reflecting his calm. When he confronted Mara, the tempter who sent fear, doubt, and desire to shake him, the moonlight did not waver. Its stillness mirrored the Buddha's resolve, as though reminding him that even in the presence of shadow, light persists. In this legend, the moon is not passive. It is a witness that empowers by presence alone. For us, this teaches that rest often requires no answers or solutions, only the reassurance that we are not abandoned in darkness. Science, too, speaks to the effect of such presence. Research on sleep and light shows that natural moonlight influences circadian rhythms, gently synchronizing the body with the cycles of night. Its glow, subtle and silver, signals to the body that it is safe to slow down, that the time for activity has passed. Beyond the biology, there is psychology. The moon has long been a symbol of quiet companionship, a reminder that even in solitude, we are accompanied. To feel accompanied, even by something as distant as the moon, reduces loneliness, softens anxiety, and makes sleep deeper. The moon that watched the Buddha also embodies impartiality. It shines on kings and beggars, monks and wanderers, forests and oceans alike. It does not choose where to cast its light. This universality teaches compassion without preference. To rest under the moon is to be reminded that we too are part of this universal embrace, no more and no less than anyone else. The realization softens ego and quiets striving, creating the humility necessary for true rest. There is another story from Sri Lanka of a monk who could not meditate during the day because of constant distractions. His teacher sent him to practice only at night, beneath the moon. The monk discovered that the moon's presence calmed him, its cool light inviting quiet focus. Over time, he learned to love the night, saying that the moon became his silent teacher, reflecting clarity without words. This story reminds us that rest and wisdom often flourish in spaces of gentleness rather than force. In modern psychology, therapists often encourage people to find symbols of safety and guidance to ease insomnia or anxiety. The moon serves naturally as such a symbol. To contemplate its light before sleep, or even to picture it while lying in darkness, can evoke feelings of protection and calm. The subconscious associates the moon with cycles, with the eternal return of light after darkness. This archetypal reassurance tells the nervous system that the night is not endless and that renewal will come. The moon also embodies change while remaining constant. It waxes and wanes, shifts in form, yet it never disappears completely. This paradox teaches resilience. Life changes shape, but its essence remains. The Buddha's enlightenment beneath the moon shows us that awakening is not escape from change, but recognition of what endures within it. For rest, this means trusting that even if emotions shift from night to night, even if thoughts wax and wane, there is a steady core within us. The moon reminds us of that constancy, easing fear of impermanence. There is a folk belief in parts of Southeast Asia that moonlight carries healing. People would sit in its glow when ill, believing it cleansed the spirit. While symbolic, this belief mirrors scientific findings. Exposure to natural nightlight stabilizes hormonal rhythms, improves mood, and reinforces sleep cycles. Thus, the moon truly does guide healing, not only spiritually, but biologically. The moon that watched the Buddha also teaches about witnessing without judgment. It saw his doubts, his struggles, his triumph, yet it did not intervene. It simply shone. To be witnessed without judgment is profoundly healing. At night, when we lie awake with thoughts of mistakes or regrets, imagining the moon watching with gentle neutrality can soften self-criticism. It reminds us that we are not defined by flaws, but are simply part of a greater whole. Another legend says that after the Buddha attained enlightenment, he gazed up at the moon and smiled, recognizing in its glow the reflection of his own inner clarity. The story suggests that the moon not only witnessed him but mirrored him. For us, this shows that guidance often reflects what we already hold within. The moon does not give wisdom. It reminds us of what is already present. Rest becomes possible when we stop seeking answers outside and begin to trust the quiet guidance within, illuminated by such reflection. In practice, one can invite the moon into nightly rituals, sitting quietly, breathing deeply, and gazing at the moon for a few minutes can create a sense of continuity with ancient seekers who also rested under its glow. Even if hidden by clouds, picturing the moon above can evoke the same calm. These practices turn the moon into a companion of sleep, a gentle reminder of guidance and protection in the dark. And so, the moon that watched the Buddha teaches us that rest does not come from control, but from quiet guidance. It shows us that presence, impartiality, and gentle light are enough to carry us through darkness. Each night, whether seen or unseen, the moon is there, watching, steady, reflecting clarity. To rest under its gaze is to remember that we are never alone, that wisdom is quietly available, and that even in the deepest night, there is always light. The moon that watched the Buddha reminded us that guidance does not always roar, but sometimes shines quietly, that in the stillness of night we are accompanied by a presence both impartial and steady. Yet light alone cannot ease the restless heart if trust is missing. Even under the moon, a mind that trembles with fear will find no rest. In the old Jataka tales, there is a forgotten story of a sparrow, small and fragile, who found sleep not through strength but through trust. This tale reveals that the foundation of true rest is safety. When the heart feels secure, the body releases, and sleep arrives without resistance. The sparrow was said to live on a branch of a great tree. Each night, predators roamed below, and storms shook the branches. Other animals could not understand how such a tiny creature could close its eyes and sleep without fear. But the sparrow trusted the branch, the wind, and the cycle of night itself. Its safety was not in controlling the world, but in yielding to trust. This story, though simple, carries wisdom for our own restless nights. Fear and vigilance are what prevent us from surrendering to sleep. Trust and safety are what allow us to release. Fear, whether subtle or sharp, keeps the body in a state of alertness. Science explains this as the activation of the sympathetic nervous system, the same system that prepares us to fight or flee. When it remains active, the body cannot descend into deep sleep. This is why unresolved stress, anxiety, or trauma disrupts rest. The sparrow teaches us another way, to cultivate safety even in the presence of uncertainty. Its trust was not in the absence of danger, but in its capacity to be held by something larger than itself. There is a parable of a monk who asked his teacher how to sleep peacefully despite his fears. The teacher pointed to a sparrow resting on a swaying branch and said, "See how it sleeps without clinging. It does not tie itself to the branch, nor does it watch the sky all night. It sleeps because it trusts." The monk understood that the mind, like the sparrow, must release its constant grasping to rest. Trust becomes the pillow on which the soul lies down. In psychological terms, this relates to the concept of felt safety. It is not enough for the environment to be objectively safe. The body must perceive it as such. Trauma researchers emphasize the importance of creating signals of safety, soft lighting, steady breath, soothing rituals that tell the nervous system it can stand down. This is how we build the conditions for rest, the human equivalent of the sparrow's trust in its branch. The sparrow's story also reminds us of humility. Being small did not prevent it from finding rest. In fact, its fragility made its trust even more powerful. Many people believe they must be strong, flawless, or in complete control before they can allow themselves to rest. But the sparrow teaches that rest is not earned through strength, but given through surrender. To sleep is to admit vulnerability, and vulnerability requires trust. Another story tells of villagers who noticed sparrows sleeping peacefully, even as storms rattled rooftops. They asked a wise elder how such tiny birds could rest so easily. The elder said, "The sparrow does not try to stop the storm. It accepts its place in the world, and in that acceptance, it finds peace." The lesson is clear. Much of our fear comes from the desire to control what cannot be controlled. When we release this demand, sleep becomes possible even in the midst of uncertainty. From a spiritual perspective, trust is linked to faith, not necessarily in doctrine, but in the simple faith that life supports us. The sparrow sleeps because it trusts that dawn will come, that branches will hold, that cycles endure. For us, faith can be cultivated through gratitude, prayer, or reflection. By remembering that we have survived countless nights before, that the world has carried us this far, we build the inner assurance that we can rest tonight as well. Modern research supports this ancient wisdom. Studies show that gratitude practices improve sleep quality by increasing positive emotions and reducing intrusive thoughts. Gratitude, like trust, tells the mind it is safe, that not all is threat. The sparrow's way of sleeping without fear is mirrored in these findings. By focusing on safety and goodness, the nervous system quiets and the body relaxes. The sparrow's tale also highlights community. Birds often sleep in groups, taking comfort from one another's presence. Humans too find rest more easily when they feel socially supported. Loneliness increases sleep problems, while connection enhances it. Compassion, forgiveness, and closeness all weave the net of safety that allows rest. To cultivate relationships is to cultivate better sleep, for safety is not only physical but emotional. There is also wisdom in the sparrow's choice of branch. It selects one that bends but does not break, one that sways but holds. This teaches us to choose supports in our own lives, environments, habits, and relationships that provide stability. Just as the sparrow cannot sleep on a crumbling branch, we cannot rest if our foundations are unstable. Creating order in small ways, tidying a space, establishing routines, practicing consistency, becomes our way of choosing a strong branch. Another parable tells of a child who feared the dark. A monk gave him a small sparrow feather and said, "Hold this, and remember the bird that sleeps without fear. The darkness will still be here, but so will the trust." The child found comfort in this symbol, and his fear softened. This shows how tangible reminders can create psychological safety. Symbols, rituals, and tokens act as anchors for trust, just as the sparrow anchored itself to its branch. From a physiological standpoint, practices such as slow breathing, progressive relaxation, or repeating calming words before sleep signal the body to lower its guard. These are human equivalents of the sparrow's trust ways of telling the body it can release vigilance. Over time, the body learns to associate these rituals with safety, making rest deeper and more reliable. The sparrow who slept without fear teaches us that rest is not about eliminating all threats, but about cultivating trust strong enough to release into vulnerability. It shows that safety is as much a perception as a condition, and that trust, gratitude, community, and ritual can weave the net that holds us. In this way, we too can become like the sparrow, closing our eyes in the night, not because danger has vanished, but because compassion and trust tell us we are safe enough to rest. The sparrow who slept without fear reminded us that safety is not the absence of storms, but the presence of trust. That rest comes when the heart feels secure enough to release. Yet trust alone is not always enough, for there are shadows within that stir at night, fears and memories that rise when silence deepens. In Buddhist stories, there is one of a monk who discovered that the only way to quiet the darkness was not to fight it, but to befriend it. His journey shows how embracing inner fears transforms nightmares into guides, how the shadow we run from can become a teacher of wisdom when we dare to meet it. The monk's story begins with nights haunted by visions. Each time he closed his eyes, images of failure, loss, and hidden desires returned to him in dreamlike forms. At first, he prayed for them to vanish, but the more he resisted, the stronger they seemed to grow. Finally, he sought counsel from his teacher, who told him, "The shadow follows you because you run. Stop running and you will see its face." So the monk chose to sit with his fears, to invite them in rather than drive them away. What he found was that the shadow was not a monster but a mirror, reflecting the parts of himself he had not yet accepted. This story reflects a profound truth about nightmares and fears. They often represent the aspects of ourselves we avoid in waking life. Psychology confirms this. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow as the unconscious side of the personality, holding suppressed emotions and unacknowledged traits. Nightmares, in this view, are attempts of the psyche to bring attention to what we have ignored. By befriending the shadow, listening, learning, integrating, we transform fear into wisdom. The monk's discovery was not mystical but deeply human. What we resist imprisons us, but what we embrace teaches us. There is a parable of another monk who dreamed of being chased by a beast. Night after night, he ran until exhaustion woke him. Finally, he turned and faced the beast, asking, "Why do you pursue me?" The beast stopped, softened, and replied, "Because you would not listen." From then on, the monk slept peacefully, knowing that his nightmares were not enemies but messengers. For us, this means that fears surfacing at night are not signs of weakness but invitations to healing. Modern neuroscience aligns with this teaching. Research into dreaming shows that the brain processes unresolved emotions through symbolic images during REM sleep. Nightmares, though distressing, help integrate trauma and regulate fear responses. People who confront their nightmares with curiosity rather than avoidance often find them less frightening over time. This mirrors the monk's practice. By befriending the shadow, he turned fear into growth. The practice of befriending the shadow begins with recognition. Instead of labeling fears as intrusions, we acknowledge them as parts of the self. This requires compassion. Just as Avalokiteshvara's breath softens pain, compassion softens fear. Saying to oneself, "This fear is part of me, and I will listen," transforms the relationship. Rest then becomes possible, not because fear is gone, but because it no longer dominates. There is another tale of a hermit who lived in a cave and was tormented by shadowy figures that appeared at night. He tried chanting louder, praying harder, and meditating longer, but nothing silenced them. One evening, exhausted, he offered them tea in his dream. To his surprise, the shadows sat quietly with him, and their forms began to dissolve. He realized that his own kindness had transformed them. The lesson is that resistance feeds fear, but acceptance disarms it. Nightmares become less threatening when we treat them with curiosity and gentleness. From a therapeutic perspective, this aligns with exposure therapy and lucid dreaming techniques. Patients are taught to face fears gradually, to rewrite nightmares, or to engage them in dialogue. Studies show this reduces distress and improves sleep quality. The monk who befriended his shadow anticipated this wisdom centuries earlier, discovering through experience that fear diminishes when met rather than fled. The shadow also symbolizes the unknown within us. Many fear what they do not understand, but in facing it, they uncover hidden strengths. The monk's shadow revealed not only his weaknesses, but his resilience, his capacity for courage, and his depth of compassion. This reflects another psychological truth. Integrating the shadow enriches the self, making us more whole. Sleep becomes deeper when the psyche is less divided, when the rejected parts of the self are welcomed home. There is a story of a young disciple who confessed to his teacher that he feared anger. He tried to suppress it, but found it emerging in dreams as violent storms. The teacher told him, "Invite your storm to sit with you. Only then will you learn what it seeks to teach." The disciple began to journal his dreams, treating them as lessons rather than torments. Over time, his relationship with anger shifted, and the storms quieted. His rest deepened not because he destroyed his shadow, but because he befriended it. Night itself is a natural mirror of the shadow. Its darkness invites the subconscious to surface. To befriend the shadow means to approach night with openness rather than dread. Instead of fearing what may arise, we prepare to meet it with compassion. Rituals before bed, such as breathing, prayer, or writing, can serve as gestures of welcome, telling the mind that all parts of the self are safe to appear. This attitude changes the tone of dreams, turning them into dialogues rather than battles. From a spiritual standpoint, the shadow is not separate from enlightenment. The Buddha faced Mara under the Bodhi tree, encountering fear, desire, and doubt before awakening. Mara was not destroyed, but recognized as part of the path. Likewise, our shadows are not barriers but companions in growth. Each nightmare, each fear, is a Mara that can be acknowledged. In doing so, we follow the same path of transformation, turning what seemed like an obstacle into a teacher. Biology again supports this wisdom. Research shows that when people reinterpret nightmares as opportunities for growth, their stress responses decrease. The body relaxes, sleep improves, and resilience grows. Fear loses its grip when reframed as guidance. The monk's experience becomes practical advice, to treat shadows not as threats, but as lessons. The monk who befriended his shadow shows us that rest is not always about escaping fear, but about transforming our relationship with it. Nightmares do not need to be banished, they can be heard. Shadows do not need to be denied, they can be befriended. By doing so, sleep becomes more than escape. It becomes a field of wisdom where the self integrates and heals. To rest deeply is to lie down, not in denial of fear, but in companionship with it, knowing that the night, like the shadow, is not an enemy, but a teacher waiting to be embraced. The monk who befriended his shadow reminded us that what we fear most often hides the wisdom we need, that rest deepens not by fleeing from darkness, but by embracing it with compassion. Yet, after shadows have been faced, the heart still needs to learn the art of surrender, the gentle release that keeps the spirit from sinking under its own weight. Zen stories often teach this through the simplicity of tea. In one ceremony, a master dropped a leaf into a bowl of water. It did not sink, nor did it fight to stay afloat. It rested lightly, carried by the surface. This small image became a profound metaphor. The tea leaf that floated without sinking shows how surrender, not struggle, is the way to ease restlessness and invite true peace. The tea ceremony in Zen is never about drinking alone. Every gesture, every sound, and every pause is a teaching. The leaf that drifts on the surface of water is not passive, it accepts the water fully, yielding to it without losing its own shape. In the same way, rest is not about forcing stillness, but allowing life to hold us without resistance. When we fight the current, we sink. When we yield, we float. This is the essence of surrender. There is a story of a young monk who grew frustrated during meditation. His thoughts pulled him down, like stones dragging him into restlessness. His master gave him a cup of tea and dropped a leaf on its surface. "Watch," the master said. The leaf trembled, shifted, but remained afloat. "This is how your mind must rest. Do not cling, do not fight. Be like the leaf." The monk understood that surrender is not weakness, but wisdom, the choice to rest upon life's surface rather than drown in effort. From a psychological perspective, this lesson mirrors the principles of acceptance and commitment therapy. Research shows that resisting intrusive thoughts increases their power, while accepting them reduces their grip. Like the tea leaf, the mind must allow thoughts to rise and pass without struggle. In this state, restlessness fades and calm emerges naturally. Sleep itself is carried on the same principle. It arrives not when forced, but when allowed. The tea leaf also represents lightness. It floats because it is unburdened, carrying no weight beyond itself. Many who lie awake at night are burdened by layers of worry, expectation, and self-criticism. These weights drag the spirit down, preventing rest. The lesson of the leaf is to set them aside, to travel light into the night. In practice, this means releasing judgment about how quickly sleep should come, letting go of rigid control, and trusting the body's natural rhythm. Zen tea ceremonies emphasize presence in small acts, pouring water, listening to the kettle, lifting the cup. Each step teaches that peace is not found in grand solutions, but in surrendering to the present moment. The leaf floating shows that rest is built not through effort, but through alignment with what is. Science supports this too. Mindfulness practices before bed reduce rumination, calm the nervous system, and improve sleep quality. Mindfulness is nothing more than the floating of the mind upon the present, free from the pull of past or future. There is another parable of a traveler who came to a tea house, restless from his long journey. The master served him tea but filled the cup until it overflowed. "Why do you pour so much?" the traveler asked. The master replied, "Your mind is like this cup too full, it cannot rest. Empty it, and like the leaf, it will float." This story shows that surrender requires emptiness. Only when we release what overfills us can restfulness appear. Biology again reflects this wisdom. Stress hormones like cortisol keep the body alert, heavy with tension. Techniques that encourage surrender, slow breathing, progressive relaxation, or gentle visualization lower cortisol and increase melatonin. This creates the lightness necessary for sleep, like the tea leaf freed of weight. Restlessness is not a sign of failure, but of excess weight. Surrender is the act of setting it down. The leaf also teaches balance. It does not cling to the edge of the cup, nor does it dive to the bottom. It finds equilibrium naturally at the surface. Our rest too depends on balance between doing and being, effort and release. Many resist rest because they swing between extremes, overexertion by day, anxiety by night. But the leaf reminds us that balance is found not in extremes, but in gentle surrender to the middle path. In Zen practice, the tea leaf is sometimes used as a meditation object. Practitioners watch its movement, noticing how it responds to ripples yet always returns to stillness. This mirrors the way the mind can drift, but return when surrendered. It teaches resilience through softness, not rigidity. The body, too, follows this principle. Heart rate variability improves when stress is reduced, reflecting resilience. This is the biological equivalent of the leaf's steady floating. A folk tale speaks of a master who told his students, "A stone sinks because it resists the water. A leaf floats because it surrenders. Which will you be?" This echoes the truth that control often weighs us down, while trust frees us. In rest, control manifests as forcing sleep, calculating hours, or battling thoughts. These sink the spirit. But when we surrender, accepting wakefulness without fear, releasing judgment, sleep comes naturally. The tea leaf also reminds us of gentleness. Its strength lies not in rigidity but in softness. Compassion toward oneself is part of this gentleness. Those who scold themselves for not sleeping only tighten the weight. But treating oneself with kindness, acknowledging the effort of the day, forgiving imperfections, creates the softness needed to float. Studies confirm that self-compassion reduces insomnia and increases relaxation, proving once again that gentleness sustains us more than force. There is another teaching hidden in the ceremony: the water itself. The leaf floats not because of its own effort, but because the water supports it. Similarly, rest does not come solely from personal strength, but from trust in being held by the bed, by breath, by life itself. This perspective shifts the burden. You do not need to make sleep happen, you only need to allow yourself to be held. The leaf does not fear sinking because the water is always there. In practice, this teaching can be embodied by visualization. As you prepare for rest, picture yourself as a leaf on still water, carried without effort. Feel the support beneath you, the release of weight, the surrender into trust. This imagery trains the mind to let go, to shift from control to acceptance. Over time, the association deepens, and rest becomes lighter, freer, like the floating of the leaf. And so, the tea leaf that floated without sinking shows us that rest is not the product of force but of surrender. It teaches that weight is what pulls us down, and letting go is what allows us to float. It reminds us that gentleness is stronger than rigidity, that trust is more healing than control, and that the present moment, when surrendered to fully, becomes a surface that carries us. Each night, when restlessness rises, the choice is before us, to be the stone that sinks or the leaf that floats. To choose the leaf is to surrender, and in surrender to find peace. The tea leaf that floated without sinking reminded us that surrender carries us when effort would only drag us down, that peace arrives when we learn to trust the surface that holds us. Yet surrender is not only stillness, it can also be expressed through sound. In temples and mountains, monks once crafted wooden flutes, simple instruments carved from bamboo or hollowed branches. These flutes were not made for performance or display, but for release. The music they carried was like a hidden lullaby, a sound born from emptiness that soothed restless minds and guided weary hearts into serenity. To listen to such a flute was to feel tension dissolve, as if the breath of the monk had been transformed into a song of calm, carried through the night. The flute itself teaches a profound lesson. Unlike drums or strings that rely on striking or pulling, the flute produces sound only when breath is surrendered into it. The monk's exhale becomes melody, a reminder that peace is born from letting go. The empty hollow of the flute is what allows the note to exist. This echoes the teaching of emptiness in Buddhism. It is not nothingness but the openness that makes everything possible. The lullaby hidden in the flute is proof that release, not control, creates beauty. There is a story from Japan of a wandering monk who carried nothing but a wooden flute. Villagers asked why he played it each night before sleep. He replied, "My heart is restless, and when I breathe through the flute, my worries leave with the sound. When silence returns, I am light enough to rest." His music was not for others but for himself, a way to transform inner weight into sound that vanished into the air. This practice reveals that expression is sometimes necessary for surrender. Holding pain inside keeps the heart heavy, but releasing it, whether through words, breath, or music, frees the spirit for rest. Science supports this ancient wisdom. Studies on music therapy show that wind instruments, especially flutes, have profound calming effects. The act of controlled exhalation regulates the nervous system, stimulating the vagus nerve, slowing heart rate, and easing anxiety. The listener, too, benefits, as the soft tones reduce cortisol and promote alpha brainwaves associated with relaxation. In both player and listener, the flute becomes a channel of release, turning breath into healing. The wooden flute also reflects impermanence. Each note exists only for a moment, fading quickly into silence. This transience is its beauty. In rest, the same truth applies. Sleep is not permanent but cyclical. Dreams come and go, and nothing remains fixed. To accept this is to let go of the fear of holding on. The lullaby of the flute teaches us to cherish the fleeting sound and then release it, just as we cherish the moment before drifting into sleep. Another tale tells of a monk who carved a flute from bamboo struck by lightning. He believed the scarred wood carried resilience. When he played it, the sound was low and haunting, yet villagers said it calmed their fears. The lesson was that even brokenness can be shaped into serenity. In our own lives, the wounds we carry can also be transformed into music, not through denial, but by allowing them to breathe. Dreams often echo these wounds, but when given release, they no longer bind us. Zen practice with the shakuhachi, a traditional bamboo flute, embodies this principle. Monks use it not as performance but as meditation, each breath a prayer, each note a surrender. The sound is said to carry the spirit of impermanence, teaching the player to let go of perfection. In this way, the hidden lullaby is not about melody but about presence. The flute becomes a mirror of the breath, reminding both monk and listener that peace lies in the exhale, in the willingness to release. From a therapeutic perspective, breath-based practices combined with sound deepen relaxation. Humming, chanting, or flute playing creates vibrations that calm the body. These vibrations resonate through the chest and skull, grounding awareness. The flute, being hollow, amplifies these vibrations, just as our bodies amplify emotion. By expressing through sound, monks discovered a way to cleanse the inner echo chamber, making space for silence. The lullaby hidden in the flute also carries the lesson of simplicity. Made from wood or bamboo, it requires no ornament, no decoration. Its beauty lies in its emptiness. In rest, the same principle applies. Peace is not found in complexity, but in simplicity. A cluttered mind cannot rest, but a mind simplified by surrender can. The flute teaches us to pare down, to focus on the essential, to let go of excess. There is a folk account of a village that invited a monk each year to play his flute at harvest time. The people believed his music called blessings. When asked why the flute had such power, the monk said, "It is not the flute, but the breath it carries. And the breath is not mine, but the wind's. I only lend it passage." This humility reflects a universal truth. We are vessels, not owners, of life. Rest deepens when we stop trying to control every detail and instead allow life to flow through us. In practice, one can adopt the spirit of the wooden flute without playing an instrument. Breathing slowly and audibly, sighing with release, or even humming gently before bed replicates the effect. These acts transform the breath into sound, carrying weight outward. Visualizing the body as a flute, hollow and open, can also help. In this image, every exhale becomes music, every release a lullaby to the self. And so, the hidden lullaby in a wooden flute teaches us that serenity arises from release, that beauty comes not from clinging but from allowing emptiness to carry breath into sound. It shows us that even wounds can become instruments of healing, that impermanence is not loss but music, and that rest is possible when we turn our inner weight into melody and let it drift into silence. Each night, whether through literal sound or quiet breath, we too can create our own lullaby, guiding us into sleep as gently as a flute, guiding air into song. The hidden lullaby in a wooden flute revealed how release becomes music, how breath turned into sound can calm even the most restless spirit. But when the song fades, silence often fills again with thoughts, endless footsteps of the mind crossing back and forth, echoing as though they will never stop. In Buddhist parables, these footsteps are likened to travelers passing over an old bridge. The bridge does not cling to them, nor does it resist. It simply allows them to cross, and then returns to stillness. This image teaches us how to ease our attachment to intrusive thoughts, to hear them as footsteps passing, rather than as truths that must remain. The old bridge stands as a witness to countless journeys. Day after day, villagers, pilgrims, and animals walk across it. Each step creates a sound, and then it fades into distance. The bridge never tries to hold on to the traveler's weight, nor does it mourn their departure. It simply endures, steady and silent. Thoughts, too, are like footsteps. They arise, make noise in the mind, and fade if allowed. The trouble begins only when we cling, when we try to chase or capture them, as though every sound must be ours to keep. There is a story of a monk who meditated beside an ancient bridge. He found himself distracted by the sound of travelers' feet echoing on the wooden planks. At first he grew annoyed, wishing for silence. But as the days passed, he began to notice the rhythm of those steps. Some were heavy, others light, some quick, others slow. None lasted. Each passed and was gone. In time, he realized the bridge was teaching him impermanence. His own thoughts, too, were only passing sounds. From then on, the echoes no longer disturbed him. They reminded him that nothing stays. This teaching aligns with modern psychology. Intrusive thoughts are common, yet their power comes not from their presence, but from our reaction. Cognitive science shows that the brain produces thoughts continuously, many of them random and fleeting. When we resist or fixate, they gain weight. When we allow them to pass, they dissolve. The bridge metaphor gives us a way to visualize this. Thoughts are footsteps. Let them cross. Do not hold them, and they will fade on their own. The bridge also symbolizes endurance. It has stood for centuries, though countless steps have crossed it. Likewise, the mind itself endures, even as thoughts come and go. This perspective gives strength. No thought, however troubling, defines us permanently. The self is like the bridge, steady beneath the noise, unchanged by the temporary crossing of footsteps. To remember this at night, when intrusive thoughts arise, is to reclaim peace. There is another tale from China of a hermit who lived near a wooden bridge. Villagers often sought his wisdom, but he rarely spoke. Instead, he told them to sit and listen to the footsteps. Many found the sounds irritating at first, but with time, they began to notice how quickly they passed. The hermit explained, "Your mind is the bridge, your worries are the footsteps. If you listen long enough, you will see that none of them stay." This practice turned distraction into meditation. Science confirms the calming effect of this perspective. Studies on mindfulness show that observing thoughts without judgment reduces anxiety and improves sleep quality. This decentering allows people to see thoughts as events in the mind, not truths about reality. The bridge parable captures this beautifully. Just as the monk realized the footsteps were not his own burden, we too can learn that thoughts need not be carried into the night. The parable also highlights variety. No two footsteps sound the same, just as no two thoughts are identical. Some are loud, demanding attention, while others are soft and barely heard. This variety teaches us not to judge or categorize, but simply to witness. At night, intrusive thoughts often seem repetitive, but they too vary and fade when not clung to. Observing their impermanence, rather than wrestling with them, transforms the experience of rest. There is symbolic wisdom in the bridge's age. Weathered by storms, sun, and countless steps, it endures with grace. In the same way, the mind grows resilient through practice. Each time we allow thoughts to pass without attachment, we strengthen our capacity for peace. Over years, this resilience becomes like the old bridge, steady, no matter how many footsteps cross. Another story tells of a child who feared the sound of footsteps on the bridge at night. He thought ghosts were walking. His teacher brought him to the bridge and said, "Wait." Soon travelers appeared, crossed, and vanished. The teacher said, "See, the sounds were only passing." The child learned that fear itself was only an echo of imagination. This applies directly to intrusive thoughts. They often feel haunting, but when observed calmly, they prove to be only passing echoes. From a physiological standpoint, intrusive thoughts often arise when the brain is overactive, especially in the default mode network. Mindfulness and acceptance practices quiet this activity, allowing the body to relax into sleep. Visualizing thoughts as footsteps crossing a bridge helps redirect attention from content to process, creating the detachment necessary for rest. The bridge also teaches humility. It does not demand recognition for carrying countless travelers. It simply does its work. Similarly, we need not assign meaning to every thought. Many are simply noise, passing across the bridge of the mind. To give them more significance than they deserve is to burden ourselves unnecessarily. Letting them pass with humility creates freedom. There is a deeper spiritual lesson as well. In Buddhism, impermanence is not cause for despair, but liberation. Knowing that all things pass allows us to release attachment. The bridge parable reminds us that clinging to thoughts is like trying to hold footsteps on wood. It is impossible. Freedom comes when we accept their passing. In practice, this can be applied before sleep. When intrusive thoughts rise, one can picture them as footsteps on a bridge, each sound fading into distance. The mind is the bridge, steady beneath them. Over time, this visualization conditions the nervous system to associate thoughts with impermanence, reducing their emotional impact. This allows the body to descend naturally into rest. And so, the old bridge and the passing footsteps teach us that restlessness comes not from thoughts themselves, but from our attempt to hold them. To listen without clinging, to observe without judgment, is to free ourselves. The bridge does not collapse under footsteps, neither must we. Each night becomes an opportunity to let thoughts cross and fade, to rest as the bridge does, steady, patient, and untouched by the noise above. As our journey through these 3 hours of calming Buddhist stories draws to a close, take a moment to notice how far you've traveled, from the still pond that taught you to let the mind settle, to the bamboo that showed the strength of release, to the empty bowl that reminded you to receive rest without struggle. You walked beneath the moon that watched the Buddha, listened to the monastery bell at dusk, and learned from the candle's final flame. You found patience in a pillow, trust in a sparrow, and courage in the leap of the celestial carp. You sat with the hermit in the echoing cave, rested on the woven mat of compassion, breathed with Avalokiteshvara, and floated as lightly as a tea leaf. You heard the hidden lullaby of a wooden flute, felt the impermanence of footsteps on an old bridge, and through it all discovered that sleep is not simply silence, but a path of healing, wisdom, and renewal. Each parable has been a lantern, guiding you closer to the kind of rest that heals from within, the rest that transforms not only the night, but the day that follows. If any of these stories touched you, I would love to hear your reflections. Share in the comments which teaching spoke most deeply to your heart, so that others may be inspired by your experience. And if you wish to continue walking this path of wisdom and calm, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss the next journey into stories that heal, inspire, and carry you gently toward peace. May your nights be serene, your dreams light, and your heart always open to rest.